at 8 a.m. So this has been a bit of a whirlwind, but the briefings that I've had, both with Mayor McCarthy and with Anna and her team, making me confident that this is a very responsible budget. Like I said, it only increases by about 3.9%, which is pretty typical for the last 15 or so years at an average budget increase. And I think really approaches our city finances in the professional, responsible way that we've come to expect in Salem. So grateful for the opportunity to be here, and thank you again, Ann.
Thank you for that. So I think we will start with the departmental budget, which the numbers start on page 450, those who are not already there. And if there are any specifics that you would like to speak to, or Anna, that you might like to speak to as you were involved in the preparation, we'll be glad to hear anything further. And otherwise, we'll hear questions and comments from members of the committee and the council.
Yeah. I'll share. We have the staffing amount you see in the personnel section is reflective of the previous model of the office. Really taking an opportunity to reflect on that structure and
comments from members of the committee and the council.
Anticipate possibly making some modifications to that. I'll share the budget, but we have require the staffing amount you see in the personnel section is reflective of the previous model of the office. Still early in the process. Really taking an opportunity personnel lines reflect on that structure outside of the standard for anticipate possibly making some modifications. I'll share the budget, but you'll see that we've had in the staffing section amount you see in the personnel section is reflective of really the largest single change early in the process. Really taking an opportunity personnel line accounting and auditing on that structure outside of the standard for anticipate possibly making some. I'll share. It's like it's done down by see that we've had actually just in the staffing section. I'm not using the personnel section last year, but really the largest single change in the process. Taking up personnel line, accounting and auditing on that structure outside of the standard for anticipation possibly making some. I'll share. It's like it's done down by see that we've had actually just in the staffing section. I'm not using the personnel section last year, but really the largest single change in the process. Taking up personnel line, accounting and auditing on that structure outside of the standard for anticipation possibly make gun. I'll share. It's like it's done down by see that we've had actually just in the staffing section. I'm not using the personnel section last year, but really the largest single change in the process. Taking up personnel line, accounting and auditing on that structure outside of the standard for anticipation possibly make gun. I'll share. It's like it's done down by see that we've had actually just in the staffing section. I'm not using the personnel section last year, but really the largest single change in the process. Taking up personnel line, accounting and auditing on that structure outside of the standard for anticipation possibly make gun. I'll share. It's like it's done down by see that we've had actually just in the staffing section. I'm not using the personnel section last year, but really the largest single change in the process. Taking up personnel line, accounting and auditing on that structure outside of the standard for anticipation possibly make gun. I'll share. It's like it's done down by see that we've had actually just in the staffing section. I'm not using the personnel section last year, but really the largest single change in the process. Taking up personnel accounting and auditing on that structure outside of the standard for anticipation possibly make gun. I'll share. It's like it's done down by see that we've had actually just in the staffing section. I'm not using the personnel section last year, but really the largest single change in the process. Taking up personnel accounting and auditing on that structure outside of the standard for anticipation possibly make gun. I'll share. It's like it's done down by see that we've had actually just in the staffing section. I'm not using the personnel section last year, but really the largest single change in the process. Taking up personnel accounting and auditing on that structure outside of the standard for anticipation possibly make gun. I'll share. It's like it's done down by see that we've had actually just in the staffing section. I'm not using the personnel section last year, but really the largest single change in the process. Taking up personnel accounting and auditing on that structure outside of the standard for anticipation possibly make gun. I'll share. It's like it's done down by see that we've had actually just in the staffing section. I'm not using the personnel section last year, but really the largest single change in the process. Taking up personnel accounting and auditing on that structure outside of the standard for anticipation possibly make gun. I'll share. It's like it's done down by see that we've had actually just in the staffing section. I'm not using the personnel section last year, but really the largest single change in the process. Taking up personnel accounting and auditing on that structure outside of the standard for anticipation possibly make gun. I'll share. It's like it's done down by see that we've had actually just in the staffing section. I'm not using the personnel section last year, but really the largest single change in the process. Taking up personnel accounting and auditing on that structure outside of the Personnel accounting and reflecting that structure outside of clarity. Anticipation structure is share second time we have required staffing means the largest hiring process. Personnel accounting.
Counselor Stott.
Thank you, Chair McLean. Nice to see you, Mr. Mayor, sitting over there. Question for you on the expenses. The contracted services line seems to be kind of flat year to year. I'm just curious if you have any details behind it.
Counselor Stott.
Consulting, constituent services, public engagement initiatives, if you have, I may not know what last year some of that went towards or what any planning of it going forward. And also kind of along that vein, I'm wondering if there's like a bigger picture idea of how to deal with translation services in the city as a whole. Constituent services.
Yeah, so we directed some ARPA funds towards language access and translation certification. A lot of the contracted services in the past have been used to pay for predominantly
And also kind of along
those
that
types
vein,
of
I'm wondering
services
if there's
or
like a
to pay
bigger
for our
picture
C-Click
idea
Fix
of how to deal with
invoices.
translation services.
That's the system we use for constituent service requests. So we directed some,
public
and that's funded out of that
engagement
item, language access and
initiatives.
translation. I don't have the specific breakdown with me. A lot of the right now in terms of what it's been used for predominantly, but I think the largest buckets, those types of services or technology for our office, including C-Click Fixes. That's the system that we use for the constituent service requests. We directed some, and that's funded out of that. I do want to make a larger effort down in terms of right now services at public meetings, including hopefully in partnership with the council at these meetings, and also expanding our language translation of city documents, essential information, not just into Spanish, but also into Portuguese. The public schools are starting to also step up their efforts to provide Spanish and Portuguese access for hopefully in partnership with the council. School documents, I think, and also expanding our taking language translation of city documents. Really would love to grow a responsibility in each department for having ownership of that work, so that every department has it as part of their regular up their efforts to provide Spanish and Portuguese access for hopefully in partnership with the council. School documents, I think, and also
Thank you. It's good to see the translation services. Just one comment on that.
Really would love to
I
grow.
see it individually in department of the translation services and the cost, but it seems that it might be more efficient to have an overarching policy of translation services in use.
Yes, yeah. So it's creation of both the policy and then also the structure for funding it. And I think the issue, for example, when we created the position of Latino Affairs Coordinator,
individually in department of the
they became the
translation
go-to for
services,
everybody
it
that
seems
just
that it
needed
might be
something
more
translated to
efficient to have an
Spanish. And that
overarching
was not
policy
fair to them. It wasn't the intention of what that role was supposed to be providing. And some departments used it more than others. And I think that having each department have ownership of that, we created a position and having it part of their practice. We use Laserfish to digitize documents. As they're created, we should be able to have not fair to them policy for intention of what that if you're generating a document for the public hiding. What is your plan for providing more than others? And I think that having each department have ownership of that, we created a position and having it part of their practice. We use Laserfish to digitize documents. As they're created, we should
show that Councilor Dominguez is joined us.
if you're generating a document for the public hiding. What is your plan for providing more than others? And I think that
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and being a member of the committee. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for great response. As you might know, I'm very interested in the item on the translation aspect. My question to you, and I think you already say it, but I just want to make sure being a member of the committee, right, you, Mayor, say you don't have exactly how much funds in the budget is being allocated for that item on the
I believe it was about 35,000 in ARPA last year that was directed towards it, and then a share of the contracted consulting services. The mayor's office is
you don't
used for,
have exactly
translation.
how much funds in the budget
Seem to be a little bit too low for
professional translation, something that I think
I believe it was about 35,000
looking
in
forward to
ARPA
have
last year that was
quality
directed
of
towards it,
translation.
and then a
Because
share
some
of
things
the
translate
contracted consulting
without any
services.
professional knowledge and translation with professional knowledge. As you might know, we have so many Latin Americans countries that for any reason one thing say one different thing than other. So based on that, the professional translation knowledge be appropriate in a way that everybody understands exactly what, as you might know, we have so many like what they try to translate. So countries, any idea, maybe any reason one thing say we increase or find one different other sources so we can really have some good quality translation knowledge be appropriate.
Yeah, I think if it's not in regular budget, then there's opportunities through ARPA, there's other funding sources to help bolster that. I would say that also not just relying on outside contractors to provide the translations, and to the extent that we can build capacity in our workforce with native speakers of Spanish and Portuguese is definitely something I would love to build on, because that provides, I would say that the greatest flexibility on outside contractors, making it part of the job responsibilities, build capacity in our workforce, not taking advantage of somebody's ability to speak English and Spanish or Portuguese, but definitely something I would love to build on. I think people that provides employees who are native speakers of the greatest flexibility, have a high capacity, making it part of the job projects on in a way that's very flexible, not taking advantage of somebody's ability to be responsive to Spanish. In terms of interpretive services, the schools providing it at the school committee meetings is expensive, but I think important. And like I said, I would like to have a conversation with the council and with the clerk about, are we able to start thinking about what it would take to have a similar program here for the public during these meetings. The schools providing it at the school committee meetings is expensive, but I think important. And like I said, I would like to have a conversation with the council.
I have a few questions on the,
are we able to start thinking about what it would take to have a similar program?
Okay, I can't take much responsibility for this.
I understand that, and hopefully we can get a new set of goals from you. I think these are
expensive, but I think
these could be updated, definitely. But my question is, a few questions on the Commonwealth Seaport Economic Advisory Council. Did this governor, is that still a working council? And goals from you, I think.
So this appears to be a copy paste. I am not a member of the Commonwealth
But my
Seaport
question
Economic
is,
Advisory Council. That was specific to
the Commonwealth
former Mayor
Seaport
Driscoll's
Economic Advisory
The same with
Council.
the,
Did this governor, is the
that
Salem
still
Housing Authority working
I'm not a member
council?
of that.
And do we have a new, do you know if
So
someone
this
has been
appears to be a
appointed yet by the
copy-paste.
governor?
I am not a member. My understanding is there
But my
has been a
question
Commonwealth
is,
Advisory Council.
on
I'm not sure it's into the confirmation
Commonwealth
process, so I don't just
Seaport
want to speak
Economic
out of
Advisory
school.
Same with
So
the,
maybe
this governor, is
but I
it
can
the
find
Salem
out.
Housing Authority working council? And do we have a new, do you know if someone has been appointed yet by the governor?
I am not a member.
The mayor's homelessness task force.
I'm not sure it's into the confirmation
Commonwealth,
process,
that's
so I
still
don't just
going?
want to speak out of
Advisory,
school.
same with
So
the,
maybe
this governor, is
but I
it
can
the
find
Salem
out.
Housing Authority working?
Well, I've been in the building for about 8 hours. So as of
The mayor's homelessness
I don't believe
task
it
force.
continued. It's just kind of been replaced by the high risk homeless task force, which is I think a better place for it, because those are the actual clinicians and providers that are working with and the outreach specialists that are working with those individuals
in the building for about
8 hours. I think it brings a level of seriousness to the work. I don't believe it continued. I think that it's not necessarily when the high risk task force is actually the ones doing or the ones actually doing the work and providers that are working with the outreach specialists that are working with those individuals
in the building for about
An update on that page.
Oh, I've many other level
necessary.
of seriousness. Council, if I may just take this opportunity to say, this is an almost 900-page document, and I think it's great that we provide as much detail and information for people. There is a point where something has so much information, it becomes inaccessible and not fully transparent. So working with the finance division, financial officer, one of my goals in the coming years is to think about next year's budget, having useful information. There's maybe fewer pages. Has so much information.
Well, hold on.
Inaccessible and
Because
not fully
I,
transparent.
I think people
So,
go and
working with
read the
the finance
text
division,
stuff,
financial officer,
and they start
one of
with
my
the mayor's
goals in the coming
office.
years to think
So
about
that's why I'm pointing this
next year's
out,
budget,
that you're the first
having
section,
useful
and that's where
information.
people are going to
There's maybe,
start. And so
fewer pages.
I'm not suggesting that you make the text lighter, because I think it's important to know what the goals were last year and what your new goals are. And I think that's important in looking at a budget, and that's what makes this a readable budget. You're the first section, and that's looking at numbers, which some people, I'm not suggesting that you make the freeze lighter, because I think it's important to know what the goals were last year and what your new goals are. And I think that's important in looking at a budget, and that's what makes it a readable budget. There's numbers, right, instead of just looking at numbers, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I'm just like,
No, and not, no, if I could just say, it's also a directive from the GFOA, which is, gives us our certification on the budget. They think that if it gets too long, it gets too inaccessible to the
and I'm
public
not
and
trying
their
to put you
goals
on
to
the
provide.
spot, I'm just like.
I don't think it's reducing the narratives. I think maybe
and
there's,
if I could just say,
it's also a directive from the GFOA, which sections with numbers that are repetitive, gives us our certification on the budget area. They think that if it gets too long, displayed in a graphical format or a way that's to the
And I'm
public
not
and their
trying to put
goals,
you on the
reduces the
spot,
size of the
like-
document. I don't think it's reducing the narratives. I think maybe there's.
Don't lose the words.
It's also a directive from the GFOA.
There's numbers missing for the new resident guides. Did we not send out new resident guides in the past 2 years?
Displayed in a graphical format or a way that's to the
And I'm
public
not
and
trying
their
to put
goals,
you on the
reduces the
spot.
size of the.
I guarantee you we did because
Okay. Just making sure. Don't lose the
I don't
words.
know why that's not filled in here, but
And are you going to continue the FYI Salem newsletter? in the past 2 years?
We'll be publishing a newsletter. We'll probably be changing the title.
I mean,
I
that's
guarantee you
I'm
we did.
assuming that's at the news and announcements
I
subscribers.
don't know why that's not filled in here, but
No, news and announcements
And are you going to continue
so if
the-
you are
the
signed up for news
FYI
and announcements,
Salem newsletter?
you're receiving an email every time publishing a newsletter on the homepage of the website, salem.com/news, salem.ma.gov.
I'm assuming that's at the news and
That's
announcements
a larger
subscribers.
group than the people that have signed up for the newsletter.
No,
News and announcements
And are you going to continue
so if
the-
you are
the
signed up for news
FYI
and announcements,
Salem newsletter?
you're receiving
Also go.
an email every time publishing a newsletter on the homepage of the website, salem.com/news, salem.ma.gov.
Really appreciate some of the comments
That's
that
a
Councilor
larger
Marcelo
group
said,
than
but
people that have signed up for the
I
newsletter.
want to just
No,
follow
news
up on
and
two
announcements.
things.
And are you going to continue
So if
the-
you
Mayor,
are
you
signed
brought
up
up
for
secret
news
fix, and I do
you're
believe that we
receiving
really
an
need to
email
tighten
every
that
time
up.
publishing a newsletter
You and I were
on
part of the
homepage
process when we
of
first got the
salem.ma.gov.
software,
Really
and
some of the
comments. I feel there's a lot of people in the community who I want to don't necessarily feel that when they make a report that it actually gets to the right place. And I do believe that we really may just be a matter of you and I were part of the process. The other thing is to Councilor Dominguez's point, I do feel like translation's important, but I do want to make sure that when the opportunity arises, that we think about ASL, signing process. This is coming up. The other thing is Disabilities Commission a few times. There may be some times where having a person who does sign translation. The opportunity arises that we think about ASL, signing process. This is coming up. The other thing is Disabilities Commission a few times. There may be some times where having a person who does sign translation. The opportunity arises that we
a general question that I want to ask.
ASL, signing.
I know you inherited most of the work that is being done for the budget.
There may be some times
Have you see any item that you worry about
the opportunity arises
that is being general question that I want to ask submitted that you think need inherit hasn't changed, must be aware of, or you think everything that they give to you is already? Have you see any item that
I mean,
you
so
worry
again, with
about
like the full caveat that I've not had a lot of time.
that
Like,
is
there were
being
months and months
I
of
want to
budget meetings with
submitted
department heads
that
and
you
with
think need
acting
inherit
mayor,
hasn't
finance,
changed,
and
must
you don't have
be
the
aware
benefit
of?
of having participated
Do
in
you
those.
think everything that they give to you is
I don't
already-
have anything like great alarm bells at anything in this budget. I think we can have a conversation about some of the full caveat that I've not had a lot of time. Forward-looking challenges that I think we need to be cognizant of. When we have our school budget hearing, we'll have a conversation about, what's going to happen with the ESSER funded. I don't have anything like great alarm bells programs in this budget. I think we'll have a conversation about what's going to happen with ARPA down the road, trying to be sustainable with that. Challenges that the trash contract need to be cognizant of is something that we're going to have our school budget hearing. We'll have a conversation. And I know that the water and sewer rate study has kind of demonstrated that if we want to make sure that we're maintaining our infrastructure in a way that's, we'll have a conversation on what's going to happen with ESSER down the road. There's going to be some forward-looking challenges that the trash contract coming out. Nothing that jumps out in this immediate budget. I think, like I said at the top one, it's a responsibly developed budget that I think is structured in a way that's professionally developed and continues the service levels that we strive to provide. Nothing that jumps out in this immediate budget. I think, like I said at the top one.
I understand that
It's
point, and I think
responsibly
you're right. You don't have
developed
the time,
budget
and
that
I
I
think
think is
really appreciate the finance
professionally
department,
developed
directors and department mayor,
continues to
acting mayor, who
brings
all his
distractions.
all
Nothing
entire
that
team
jumps out in
for
this
doing
immediate budget.
a great job.
Like I said,
My question is going targeting to your vision on what you think is going to be your administration. And I think most of the time, even though you inherited any all information, you got your own that you bring it in. And from day one, you see something that is wrong, that needs to be changed. But you answered it right, so I don't want to put you on the spot. I understand that during the time you might be able to see more and be able to suggest any change. Thank you for your response. You got your own that you bring it in, and from day one you see something that is wrong, that needs to be changed. But you answered it right, so I don't want to put you on the spot. I understand that during the time you might be able to see more and
Mr. Chair, if there's no other questions or comments, I'm happy to make a motion.
You got your own that you bring it in.
I think that's appropriate. I just do want to give the mayor an opportunity. We will have specific time to discuss the CIP, but is there anything that you want to highlight?
During the time you might be able to see more
relationships.
Mr. Chair, if there's no other questions or comments, I'm happy to make a motion.
Nothing really specific. There's no CIP for the mayor's office. I think I mentioned at the start that you'll see the previous administration made a very intentional decision about how to fund some of the priorities. So you'll see more on the short-term capital and less in terms of heavy borrowing, really specific long-term debt. CIP for the mayor's office, and then really that placeholder for MSBA for the next phase. You'll see there was the previous administration made a new debt. Very intentional decision about how to fund some of the priorities. So you'll see a lot of routine investments in water and sewer infrastructure upgrades, road and sidewalk improvements, long-term debt. There's a significant amount of placeholder for MSBA vehicle costs that are being incurred. Not so much more than normal, but I think enough that it's worth calling out in some of the departments meetings. A lot of routine investments in water and sewer infrastructure upgrades, road and sidewalk improvements, long-term debt. There's a significant amount of placeholder for MSBA vehicle costs that are being incurred. Pump stations for water. Not so much more than normal, but I think enough that it's worth calling out in some of the departments meetings. A lot of routine investments in water and sewer infrastructure upgrades, road and sidewalk.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the personnel budget in the amount of $449,498, and the expenditures budget in the amount of $124,400.
Enough that it's worth calling out.
Councilor Hapworth makes a motion to approve the mayor's personnel budget in the amount of $449,498
to approve
and the expenditures budget in the amount of $449,400
and the expenditures budget in the
for a
amount of
roll-up amount of $573,898. Second by Councilor Merkel to approve the mayor's personnel budget in the amount of $449,403 plus by and the expenditures budget in the amount of $4,400
and the expenditures budget
for a roll-up amount of $573,898. Second by Councilor Merkel to approve the mayor's favor onto our human resources department. 3 plus by and the expenditures budget in the amount of $4,400
and the expenditures budget
for a roll-up amount of $573,898. Second by Councilor Merkel to approve the mayor's favor onto our human resources department. 3 plus by and the expenditures budget in the amount of $4,400
and the expenditures budget
for a roll-up amount of $573,898. Second by Councilor Merkel to approve the mayor's favor. All of those microphones were on and functional before you got here. 3 plus by and the expenditures budget in the amount of $4,400. Okay. For a roll-up. We are, I always start with the number page. We are on page 560 if you like numbers, a couple pages earlier if you want the narrative. We are joined by our Human Resources Director. You have the floor. Use the tall one. Okay. We are, I always start with the number page. We are on page 560 if you like numbers, a couple pages
Thanks for this
earlier if you want
opportunity.
narrative.
I'm going to talk about my department
We are
and
joined by our Human
questions about
Resources
the budget.
Director. You have the floor.
I do know all of you, but for people either watching at home or just to
Use
be
the
aware of
tall
what
one.
our department does, there are 4 of us, myself as the director.
With the number
I have a
page. We are on
personnel
page
assistant,
560
Amy
if you
O'Keefe.
like numbers, a
I
couple
have a
pages earlier
benefits
if you want
manager,
narrative.
Jim Teliadoros,
and
and Alicia Brady, who is our
Budget.
office manager,
I
slash, I often call her my assistant because she sort of holds everything together. Just to
Use
be
the
aware of
tall
what our
one.
department does. The part-time switchboard operator also falls under my department. And we also coordinate the volunteers to get the switchboard as well. We don't have our part-time employees. Our office manager. And the department I like to say that while my department deals with the public, we sort of, my part-time switchboard universe are all of our employees, right, from start to finish. So, we post positions, the volunteers, we switchboard as well. Do our, schedule our interviews, and, we hire full-time, part-time, I like to say that staff, while my department participate in negotiations, we administer the different collective bargaining agreements. We work very closely with the treasurer's office as well as the finance department to make sure that people are paid correctly and accurately and in compliance with the collective bargaining agreements. And I interact with pretty much our department overall, interacts with pretty much every department in the city, of course. Bargaining agreements. We administer the workers' compensation insurance for the city and the schools. We administer and oversee the unemployment in compliance with the unemployment compensation for the city and the school department. And we also oversee all of the health insurance. And that health insurance, life insurance, workers' compensation, which are like the biggest pieces of budget that we work. I feel like we work on it all year to try to keep those numbers down because that's a huge chunk of employment compensation for the city. And so that's pretty much an overview. I also have the honor and the privilege, I will tell you, to be the ADA coordinator, which means I am also the liaison to the Commission on Disabilities that we work. I think it's just a terrific board. There's 9 of them, and Councilor Cohen is the city council liaison, and it's just a great group that is really committed to overseeing and advising and ensuring accessibility and disabilities that we work. I think it's just a terrific board. There's 9 of them, and Councilor Cohen is the city council liaison, and it's just a great group that is really committed to overseeing and advising.
I would like to ask you questions in a similar vein as some we heard before, specifically related to educational training. I noticed that number likewise is flat in your budget, and that I'm sure it's meant to cover a whole number of initiatives, not just language accessibility. So I'm curious how the priority that we sort of heard from the mayor about, it's great to have translation services, but it's also great to have people who can actually interact in the language, integrated into our city services. Has there been a push to get that instituted, both in terms of staff that we're bringing on? It's great to have translation services, training opportunities for the staff we already have. Does that all run through you? Does it get sprinkled throughout the department budgets? How does that all get?
So you can see I'm smiling because I'm really happy to talk about this. I invite you to come over to 98 Washington over on the 3rd floor, the conference room. There's all the sheets that we have for our conversational Spanish classes that we're offering to employees for our second round. Just so you can see that we really are pushing this. This is our second round this fiscal year, and we'll extend that into it'll go through probably the middle of July over the third one as well. But so the internal pieces that we had, I think 12 or 15 employees, 8-week class, 8 weeks, twice a week over at 98. And like I said, why I want you to see it only is because the charts are on the wall. There's sections, telling people, tengo un fin de semana buena. There's all these sorts of phrases for people to learn. So we're really trying to integrate that so that our employees can, break that barrier. The minute somebody like I said, why I want you to see their department who may not, have English as their first language. Because, I speak fluent Spanish, and I know that if somebody comes in to learn who doesn't speak, we're really trying to integrate that English. The minute the person, the minute any one of us is trying to help that person, the minute you say, que puedo ayudar a usted or que necesita algo como así, what they, whole demeanor and everything changes. It breaks down that barrier. The whole dynamic of the conversation changes. And then there's an effort on both sides to try to make it work. So yeah, we're firmly committed to that. In fact, the mayor elect saw that the other day when he came over, and we talked about additional, opportunities like this. So we're in our second one for this fiscal year. We had one class before COVID, and then we finished that session right when COVID hit. So we had to in-person classes, that sort of thing. We brought it back together. We're on the second session now, and opportunity looking to do another session probably in the fall. We won't do much over the summer because I think the teachers actually go on vacation. And we're looking to do something for our Department of Public Services employees. So we're going to try to gear it to the different departments. Right now it is offered to employees here at City Hall proper, as well as 98 Community Life Center and library employees, pretty much, all employees, services employees. And it's working really well. Friday, Wednesday mornings, 9 to 10:30, and Friday mornings, 9 to 10:30. Come by, check it out. Employees here at City Hall proper.
Thank you for that. So is this sort of a
library employees,
a volunteer-based initiative, right? We offer this to staff and they may choose to do it. Is there sort of an intentional, like, we want somebody from each department to participate in this?
So I actually think it's a little bit of everything. So we had done it, like I said, before COVID, there was always an idea. I mean, at one point, we were really, we weren't sure how we were going to handle it. I was like, we were trying to phonetically write out words so that people could just sort of get past some of the basics. I was like offering to do some of that, but it's a bigger commitment, right? So we had people volunteer, like I said, before COVID, the first time, and then the second time we sent it out, and there was a waiting list immediately. And when Rahina came on board, our DEI director, Rahina Zaragoza, part of her interviews with people, there was a bigger commitment, a lot of interest in the ability of people to be able to speak Spanish. So there was a lot of interest, and it was sort of, I would say, employee-wide. I mean, it wasn't, no, we didn't on board. I'm not aware of, and I don't think it happened, any type of you're going, or, you need to go. I mean, there's collective efforts like in our parking department, we had people volunteer Spanish. So over the Community Life Center, it's pretty well spread out. I would say it is voluntary, but I mean, it was such a success, and everyone's having fun. And I would go by the house, but instead of saying, hey, how are you guys? What's happening? It's like, I'd start talking Spanish to them right away. Department, they get on, sort of get excited about it and try to respond in Spanish. It's pretty well spread out.
That's wonderful. Do you have a sense based on our current
it was such a success, and everyone's
it
having
might
fun.
take for us to get to a point where
Instead of saying, hey, how are you guys?
picking one community Spanish speakers in our community might be able to access any given office and be likely to find somebody to communicate with them in their own language. How long is it going to take us to based on our current?
It was such a success, and everyone's having fun. I would think about that for a minute, but the effort is there, and the way that Victoria conducts the classes is, she sort of does a little bit of an inventory to find out, what department everyone is from, and then gears like phrases and keywords and things like that. But I mean, I know in the health department, the effort is there, and I've had conversations on the other day. The way that Victoria conducts the classes is Park and Recreation. I spoke with Tiffany the other day, and I know she sent something out in Spanish to somebody. Gears, phrases. I think it's going to vary per person, and to what degree they continue to practice. But I know in the health department, I think what's good is when you have more than one or two people in the department that are in the class, they can practice amongst each other. I don't know that I want to venture into on how long it would take for that to be a comfortable conversation, but I think, as I said before too, just breaking down that little bit of a barrier makes all the difference in the world, because then the person who doesn't speak English and then the person who's trying to speak Spanish, sometimes they can sort of get through it, and then sometimes it's somebody in the office that can assist, but just starting with that dynamic really makes all the difference. I mean, I've seen it, and I've seen it now with people that are learning to speak the smaller phrases, because then the person who doesn't speak English and then the person who's trying to speak Spanish,
it's actually, it is a popular program. I tried to sign up for the class before the one session before COVID, and I didn't get in.
I mean, I've seen it,
So
and
it's
I've
a
seen it now.
high bar.
The smaller phrases.
I think the other side of it is it helps these employees be a little better equipped to interact with certain members of the public in a language that's their preference or their choice, or the only language they speak for COVID, and they provide some degree of understanding of the different cultures, so they're able to interact with people with a little bit more comfort. I think the other side of it is an ability helps, and it also, I think, importantly, is providing a really good social environment for those employees. Their preference or their choice, or that's not the reason we do it, but I think that the side effect of them understanding of getting to know other employees from other departments and other buildings and interacting with them in a way that they wouldn't have otherwise really helps morale. And importantly, to this point, I think really hoping to identify other types of similar programs around. That's not the reason we do it, but I think we're able to both have those kinds of getting to know morale lifting experiences, social environment, but also grow professionally and really also whatever their role is at this point, I think. Really hoping to identify other types of similar programs around.
Before we start with our conversation, I will just note, as Director Conrad noted, we are going to go through sort of the administrative budget, and then we will also talk about workers' compensation and employment group insurance. So if we can keep our questions targeted to the section that we're talking about. Before we start with our conversation, I will just note, Councilor Marcel, as Director Conrad noted, we are going to go through sort of the administrative budget, and then we will also talk
guiding principle for new hires to prefer bilingual
Our questions targeted to the section
people,
that we're talking about.
to intentionally hire those that can speak other languages?
Yes, some of our job descriptions ask for bilingual applicants are encouraged to apply.
Guiding
It's
principle
also
for new hires
in the
to
job
prefer
description, say,
bilingual
the ability to speak
people,
Spanish or
to
bilingual.
intentionally hire
I
those
think we
that
need
can
to cast
speak
a wider net.
other languages?
I think that, I was talking of our job descriptions ask for bilingual, Mayor-elect encouraged to apply.
Guiding
It's
principle
also
for
in,
new hires to
I just,
prefer
I think that we might need to
bilingual
widen our net to attract
to
people to
intentionally
speak more than
hire
one language. I
those
think we
that
need
can
to cast a
speak
wider net.
other languages?
I think that, I was talking of our job descriptions ask for bilingual.
Thank you, Chair McLean. And I just want to quickly say how much I appreciate these efforts. First of all, when you described what your department does, it was a very long list. And it does, I mean, it's super helpful to have someone who's fluent who can really assist someone, but
And
with the Spanish, I personally stumble through when I greet people doing volunteer work. They just appreciate you trying. It just shows a level of respect and connection. So I really get what you're saying, get what you're saying with that, and I really appreciate it. And also, to Mayor Pangalo's comment of when you have just an event or an activity that brings different departments together, it does create team building. Like when I recently attended the North Shore CGC, had the faceless dolls event, and different people from other departments joined it. I got to know an activity that brings people from other departments that I didn't know, and it was an opportunity to connect. So I appreciate anything of that nature going on as well. I think it's really helpful. An event and different people from other departments joined it. I got to know an activity that brings people from other departments that I didn't know.
Thanks for me as well for all that you do and your team. One question I had, well, two questions I had around training. I noticed that you have four goals for the DEI training for 23 and 24. Are you assisting Rahina with organizing them? Is that the training number there? One question I had, well, two questions I had around training. I noticed that you have four goals for the DEI training for 23 and 24.
Yes, so
are you assisting Rahina
initially,
with organizing them?
citywide trainings that she did, those are coordinated
training
with Rahina as well as
there?
my department. Alicia,
One
we,
question I
you know, we had a
around
huge
training.
sheet of all employees and trying to sort of plug. So we didn't have just one whole department at a time. We mixed everybody up. And then now with new hires, it'll be quarterly. So I put in 6, but if something comes up or something arises unexpected, you know, I put a little bit of a cushion. You know, we had those will be coordinated through my employees and try to sort of plug. So we didn't have just one whole department
a
at
follow-up
a time. We
question
mixed
to all of
everybody
those
up.
trainings that we were just talking about, or more conversational training.
So I put in 6, but
There's
if
no
something
line item
comes
in
up
your
or
budget for that.
something
So is that
arises
something that is being
unexpected,
done, or is there and I missed it? I did notice there was an increase of the educational training. I didn't know if that was part of it, like, or it sounded like there's a member of your staff that might be providing some of the training or help, or is it outsourced and contracted?
So it does fall under the education line.
Or is there and I missed it?
You'll notice my expense line.
I did notice there was an
level
increase of the
funded. We try to
educational
run pretty
training. I
lean.
didn't know if that was
And
part of it,
make
like,
our own
or
envelopes.
it sounded like
our own
there's
labels
a
for the
member of your
envelopes.
staff that might be providing some of the
like
training
that.
or help, or
But
is it outsourced and
the
contracted?
education that paid for it the first time, and it wasn't it's not a heavy lift. It wasn't thousands and thousands. I try to run. We can live within that and make our own envelopes, Spanish classes, our own, you know, the envelopes, the notebooks that we purchased and some of the supplies. But the education that paid for it the first time, and it wasn't it's not a heavy lift. It wasn't thousands and thousands. I try to run. We
I
can live
had to
within
say
that.
something about this. I really appreciate that. You see how the new and past administration are working very hard on bringing the Latino community on board in so many aspects. I can say by the police department, I appreciate that. By the department, the new members, the numbers that we have for Latino past administration are force working very hard. Overall, in the whole city, is speak very loud and clear that it's been a big effort to do it. I hope that's why I asked the mayor, the new, want to continue with the same path. Numbers what you propose, because I think that's we need to be increased every year overall in the whole city because the population is growing, and I think that everybody benefits. I hope integrate everybody. That's why I asked, and I see the effort and command you as a you want to continue HR, which I know you have so many others Latino that's new and all in your department. So I just want to encourage you to continue to put attention to that. That's great. That's gonna at the end gonna pay off and gonna help everybody. So thank you so much. So many others Latino that's new and all in your department. So I just want to encourage you.
I want to echo appreciation. On a
at the
personal
end
level, I
gonna
want to
pay off
say
and
that
help
without
everybody.
Jim, I
So
would
thank
have
you so
no
much.
idea
Many others
anything about benefits.
new and
Seems really confusing, and he's
department. So I just want to encourage
yeah, I want to echo, and I do want to commend you for your work. On a personal level, I want to say that without Jim, I would
thank you so much.
and to the Disabilities Commission, I know Councilor Stott served really confusing and as a liaison as well. You know, as we talk about diversity of our community, we don't always appreciate the diversity of people with disability. It's not just people who use wheelchairs or people who have, you know, challenges with sight. There's a whole talk about diversity of our community. You know, it's very varied, and I think right now the commission is represented people with disability much better than it used to be. So I want to commend you for that and the work that you do with sight. There's a whole talk about diversity of our community. You know, it's very varied, and I think right now
I do want to remind you though, on
is
Friday morning
represented
or Wednesday morning,
much
feel
better
free to
than it
pop
used to
over to
be.
98
So I
between
wanna
9 and
commend you
10:30.
for that and the work
On
that
Wednesdays,
you
I just want to
do
go back to the
with
Spanish
sight.
class because I really am
There's a
passionate about that because
whole
I've seen the changes with employees.
you know, it's very varied.
She does a lot of, you know, grammar and sentence structure and that sort of thing on Wednesdays, but what she does on Fridays, she starts off a little bit of culture. She brings in a few different guest speakers. On Wednesdays, I just want to go back I spoke to them once. I mean, I introduced them, you know, the first day anyway, but I went in and spoke like my time when I worked in Lawrence, all that time, and the grammar and different culture structure. So feel free to pop in. I think she'd be very happy on Wednesdays, but what she does on Fridays, she starts off a little bit of culture. She brings in a few different guest speakers. On Wednesdays, I just want to go back I spoke to them once. I mean, I introduced them, you know, the first day anyway, but I went in and spoke like my time when I worked in Lawrence, all that time, and the
I think
grammar
I would
and
like to
different
give you the
culture structure. So
opportunity.
feel free to pop in.
I didn't notice any human resource specific capital project numbers. If I'm wrong about that, please correct me. But as we are clearly having a conversation about access and ADA, I just wonder if there's anything else within the CIP that you would want to highlight. Notice any human resource coordinated capital project numbers. I know there's some improvements coming out. Please correct me, but there's any other as we are clearly having a conversation about access and ADA, I just wonder if there's anything else within the CIP that you would want to
I would
highlight.
comment that like you know we have the ADA transition plan that we
I know there's some
a couple years ago. Losing track of time here. But now what it's the living document, right? When we did that, it was a big undertaking. But I think what it showed us was the place we were deficient in certain areas, right? So I do know that departments have sort of have it like sort of baked in the cake now, like focusing on accessibility. So I don't have a particular line item in my budget for that. It's a living document, as projects are funded and different activities. But I think what it showed us was what they're doing. It's built in there, right? So I do know that departments have sort of have it like sort of baked in the cake now, like focusing on accessibility. So I don't have a particular line item in my budget for that. It's a living document, as projects are funded and different.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to
What it showed us
approve
what
the
they're doing.
department
It's
personnel total of 555,813 and the expenditures total of 31,800 for a grand total of 587,613.
Councilor Hapworth moves to accept the Human Resources Department personnel budget in the amount of $555,813 and the expenditures budget in the amount of $31,800 for a sum of $587,613. Second by Councilor Stott. All those in favor? Human Resources Department, my own. The matter carries. Amount of $555,813. On to workers' compensation. expenditures budget in the amount of 31,800
total of
for a sum of
So as I mentioned earlier, I can just give a brief overview.
All those in favor? Human
We
Resources.
have been
Department of
insured
Own,
with
that carries.
Maya,
Amount of
Massachusetts Individual Insurance
55,000.
Association.
On to workers' compensation.
2008 for our workers' compensation claims. What's so as I mentioned helpful with that is when an employee is injured on the job, we'll file, we follow the claim, we send it off to the insurance company, but we're not making that decision on the legitimacy of the claim. And I can't stress enough just on some of the, there was a time we were self-insured for that, and no difference to the past, it just, we're in a different time now, and it's just what's really helpful, send it off to the insurance company, but to work with, we're not making that decision on the legitimacy to see if we can offer any type of light duty, that sort of thing. We do have 5 claims that I call the pre-Maya tail claims, which is also part of this budget. We are still required to pay salaries on those claims, and that's why that's one of the line items as well in the workers' compensation budget. And we're also required to pay, we call them workers' compensation medicals, if there are any medical costs incurred for those, we are still required to pay salaries on those claims, and that's why that's one of the line items as well in the workers' compensation budget. And we're also required to pay, we call them workers' compensation medicals, if there are any medical costs incurred for those, we are still required to pay salaries on those claims, and that's why that's one of the line items as well in the workers' compensation budget. And we're also required to pay, we call them workers' compensation medicals, if there are any medical costs. I mean, the biggest piece of this budget, I'll just, we were just briefly talking, is the workers' compensation premium, which, is a big number. But the way it works is it's based on our estimated payrolls, but it also goes by your class code and the risk codes for different positions. So it's more costly to insure, say, someone who climbs a tree or is working, say, in the water department than it is for clerical employees. Based on, and then what happens is they take that number, they put on it what's called the experience mod, and that goes by your class code and the risk codes for different positions. So if you've had a heavy year 3 years ago, next year that will fall off, and it just sort of tails on the water department than it is for, we offer trainings for worker safety. We do everything we can to try to get people back to work. If there's any type of light duty, remember we budget for their salary. So if you've had a heavy year, so 3 years ago, those payments for their salary, workers' comp salary coming from the insurance company, hopefully, we'd like to keep those as low as we can and for a short amount of time as we can, because again, we don't budget for those. So those will affect us a few years down the road. So if we can accommodate some type of light duty, maybe somebody can't lift more than 10 pounds, but that person can hopefully help us. We'd like to keep those as low as trash pickup or for a short amount of time as we can, as long as we can work something through, we'll do that as well. So those will affect us a few years down the road.
Thank you.
We can accommodate some type of light duty.
Looking at the descriptions here, I think I understand your explanation about the premium. That makes fine sense to me. I'm having less success digesting item 5111, the salary is full-time. I'm a little bit confused by the way it's broken out. I think I understand your explanation about what was voted for fiscal year 2023 and the request for fiscal year 2024, and just the way those two having less success digesting item 5111, the salary is full-time. I'm a little bit
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for
confused
that
by the
question.
way
This
it's
is
broken
actually
out.
a formatting matter that we're working on.
What was voted for fiscal year 2023 and the request for fiscal year 2024, and just the way those two having less success digesting
mark in the description determines it's a
item
different
5111,
item and gives it a separate line. And
I'm-
so we
I'm
are working to
little
find
bit
a way to make
confused
that
by
a
the way
question
it's
review
broken
because it
out.
can become formatting why it's separated and because the date was changed.
For
It
fiscal year
looks like last year we might
2023
have
and
updating the
fiscal
date,
year
but since that was
2024,
cleaned up
and
this
just the way
year,
those two
our
having less
change to the
success
punctuation mark in the
digesting
description. And so
item
if we're going to item,
5111,
it
the
gives it a
salary is
separate
full-time.
line. And so we
Thank
are
you for
working
that.
to find a way to make that a
By the way it's
review
broken
because
out.
it can become formatting why it's separated and because the date was
Mr. Dominguez.
changed. It looks like last year we might have updating the date.
Chair
But
McLean,
since
and
that was
thank
cleaned
you
up this
for
year, our change to the punctuation mark in the
balance
description.
this
And so if we're going to item, it
so
gives it a
important
separate line.
item on the
So we
budget,
are
compensation
working
for
to
the
find a way to make that a
employees. And
review because it can become
you mentioned that
formatting why it's
premium was the
separated and
biggest
because the date was
item,
changed. It
was
looks like last year we might have updating the date.
706,000
But
McLean,
since
and
that was
thank
cleaned
you
up this
for
year,
an
our
only
change
increase
to the
like
punctuation mark
56
in the
balance
description.
this.
And so
You
if we're going to item, it
so
gives it a
important
separate
50 something
line.
thousand item on the
So we
budget.
are
There's a
working to
7
find a
for
way
the
to make that
2023 was 706. You mentioned that premium was the biggest item for the was 700. Both one is at only like 50 something thousand. Only increase like 56 balance is you. So in 50 something thousand.
Thank you, Counselor. So you're correct. The FY '24 premium estimate that we've received from Maya is $760,000. We are able to back out some costs that would otherwise be incurred by the city. First, we were able to back out, we get a 2.5% discount when we pay our bill early. FY '24 within a certain amount of days when we receive from Maya is $700 invoice. And the second piece that has changed quite a bit actually from last year is the allocation where the school contributes a portion towards the premium, and we based on the amount that the school had budgeted overall for all of their insurance premiums, we were able to increase their allocation going into next year, which was appropriate to do so because of it actually from last year. Recent history, the school contributes a portion better than I in terms of the allocation between city and school claims that has been heavier on the school side, and so it seemed appropriate to push a bit more onto the school side that had not been adjusted in several years. And so that's why the actual increase on the city side is a little bit less than what you would otherwise be expecting, going from 706 in terms of the allocation between FY '23 to 760,000 heavier on the school side, early pay, and also looking to the school to contribute a bit more based on that claims experience, that history that the actual increase on the city that Lisa was discussing, and they were able to accommodate that based on the number they gave me in terms of the increased on their end. FY '23 to 760,000 heavier on the school side, early pay, and also looking to the school to contribute a bit more based on that claims experience, that history that the actual increase on the city that Lisa was discussing, and they were able to accommodate that based on the number they gave me.
And just for extra clarity's sake, I know that there was there are some notes of salaries within the line items here. We're talking about money that we're paying out to employees that are their salaries, right? So these are not salary costs. We're not approving any personnel costs within this. This is all extra clarity's sake. I know that there was there are some notes of salaries within the line items here. We're talking about money that we're paying out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I've got all these here. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the workers' comp expenditures total in the amount of $556,660. The unemployment compensation expenditures total in the amount of $200,000.
We're paying out.
Thank you, Mr.
Let's
Chair.
just do.
Yeah,
let's do.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the workers' comp expenditures total in the amount of $556,660.
Councilor Hapworth makes a motion to approve the workers' compensation expenditures budget amount of $556,660. Let's just do. Seconded by Councilor Stott. All those in favor? 3 plus my own. Matter carries. Councilor Hapworth makes a motion. Now we will approve the workers' compensation expenditures budget amount of $556,660. Let's just do. Seconded by Councilor Stott. All those in favor?
Actually a little lower.
3 plus my own. Matter carries. Councilor Hapworth makes a motion. Now we will approve
Actually lower.
the workers' compensation expenditures.
We're just not seeing the trends that we've seen, so I thought it would be a smart move to just, we thought it would be collectively. I spoke with Anna, and it just made some sense to drop that number a little bit because we're just not seeing the trends. A few years ago we saw, unemployment claims like I've never seen before. 1 year I came back to the council last week, it would be as smart as over $100,000. We thought it would be because collectively I spoke with Anna, and it just made so many claims because we just don't have trends. The one thing we are seeing, a few years ago we saw, I might have reached out to some of you that recently, or in the recent past, on fraudulent claims, we still process those. It's just happening everywhere. In Massachusetts has the highest number right now. We don't pay for those. I'm just letting you know that's also sort of on the landscape, but we're just not seeing the trend. And we'll work with the school department. I have a meeting with the school department tomorrow to talk about reasonable assurance letters. This is also the time of the year what's happening everywhere. Letters go out. So right now, we don't pay for those. I'm just letting you know that's also they can apply for unemployment. And we're just not seeing the trend. But also the other piece that's very important is a reasonable assurance letter. So we're working closely with the school department to make sure that we have all those in place, so that we're able to keep track of any claims filed. And also they can apply because they have unemployment. And we're just not seeing the trend. But also the other piece.
You're right. This is a big drop. It was very noticeable. I was not expecting to see 20% drop in this budget line item at all. you noted in passing just now that a few years ago you saw unemployment claims like you wouldn't believe. I think we all kind of remember COVID and the Great Resignation and all that happening. Is part of this reduction sort of a return to baseline, right? We're only looking a year back. Was there sort of a spike? And you noted part of the reduction is getting back more towards what historically would have happened. Claims like you wouldn't believe. I think we all kind of remember COVID and the Great Resignation
Yeah,
and all that
I mean, I
happening.
think that, and I also think
part
that,
of this
you know,
reduction sort of a return to baseline,
people are finding
right? We're only
employment,
looking
even if
a
they
year
are
back.
not
Was there
renewed,
sort of
perhaps
a
the
spike?
school
And you
department.
noted part of the
And
reduction
I
is
will
getting
tell you
back
that
few
within the
years
last
towards
5 or
what
6 years,
historically
we
would have
really
happened.
tightened up
Like you
that
wouldn't believe.
process
I
of
think we all
reasonable
kind
assurance
of
letters
remember
and making sure
COVID
that
and the
we're
Great
all on the same
Resignation
page
and
with
all
that.
that.
I think that, and so we could keep track
Part
of
of this
things. So I would say a
reduction
lot
sort
of
of a
things
return to
probably people are
baseline,
finding
right? We're only
employment.
looking
Communications
a
probably
year
not
back.
renewed,
Was there
perhaps the
sort of a
school
spike? And you
department.
noted part of the
And I
reduction
will
is
tell
getting
you
back
that
few
within the
years
last
towards
5 or
what
6 years,
historically
we
would have
really
happened.
tightened up
Like you
that
wouldn't
process
believe. I
of
think we all
reasonable assurance letters and making sure that we're all on the same page with that. And so we still administer them on both sides. So we send out communications probably not renewed, perhaps the school department.
Love seeing budget
And I
numbers
will
go
tell you
down.
that
Just
within the
warms
last
my
5 or
heart.
6 years, we really tightened up that process of reasonable assurance letters and making sure that we're all on the same page with that.
Any other
And
comments
so
or questions?
we still administer them on both sides.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Communications
Counselor
are
Hapworth.
not renewed, perhaps the school department.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a
And I
motion to
will tell you
approve
that
the
within last 5 or 6
unemployment
years,
compensation
we
expenditures total in the amount of 200,000.
Counselor Hapworth makes a motion to approve the unemployment compensation expenditures amount of $200,000, seconded by Counselor Markle. All those in favor? 3 plus my
I'd
own.
like to make a motion to approve
So approved.
unemployment compensation
On to
expenditures
group
total in the amount of
insurance.
200,000.
Counselor Hapworth makes a motion to approve the unemployment compensation expenditures amount of $200,000, seconded
I know
by
it's kind
Counselor
of silly,
Markle.
but
All
I
those
do.
in favor? 3 plus my
I
own.
do. I find it really fascinating.
approved.
So we've been with the
Group
GIC,
insurance.
Group Insurance Commission, since 2012. We've had different public employee committee agreements over the years. And we've
3 plus my own.
determined that it was in our best interest for the city. So we've been with the GIC, just stay with the GIC. For a whole host of plans, they're affordable, had different, the coverages, committee agreements over the years. Excellent. I think that people appreciate being able to choose a plan that meets their needs as opposed to having one size fits all. Because sometimes that premium might be a lot higher for someone who doesn't use healthcare facilities as much as someone else who does. So this gives people an opportunity to choose a plan. I think that people appreciate, and usually the size of the network determines the meets their needs cost of the premium, right? So people have an opportunity to make some choices. That premium might be a lot higher. This is July 1st. This fiscal year will be the start of our third or fourth contract with the GIC for 2 years. We did actually do our due diligence and go out to bid to see if any other carrier was out there. And we did have some responses, but they were higher than what we'd be paying now. So we decided to stay where we were. It made more sense with the GIC for 2 years. That's where we are. We did actually do our due diligence and had a few little hiccups. We knew things like this were coming. They did merge a few of their plans and they sort of consolidated a few things, but we did some heavy educational sessions out there. We went out on site to the police department, the fire department. We had a few, went over the library, we went over the school department and had some in-house sessions here to explain to people, what will happen if you do something, what will happen if you don't do something. Sessions out there. We went out. I think people are comfortable being able to make a decision. We had a few, went over the library, we went over
Thank you. I appreciate hearing that you went out and did some
in-house sessions here to explain to people, what will happen if you do something, what will happen if you don't do something.
Massachusetts and
Sessions out there. We went
definitely
out.
changed
I
for a
think
number
people
of people. So
are comfortable
I think
being
that
able
was
to
an
make a
important thing
decision.
to do, and I'm appreciative of hearing that.
Went over the library. we went
Can
over
you
the
speak
school department,
specifically
had
to
some
the opt-out program line item in the budget,
what will happen
which
if you do something,
is
what will happen if you
increasing
don't do
fairly
something.
significant in Massachusetts?
Yeah, so this is something we actually promote, and I wish, that more people would take advantage of it, right? So when we do these educational sessions and, the opt-out program allows an employee who's been on one of our health plans for at least 1 year to then opt out. And we offer a cash incentive for that, and it goes for 2 years. So if you opt out of a family plan, right? So it's $6,000 paid out over 2 years. there is 1,500. The opt-out program allows, so yeah, 4 payments of 1,500. And if you opt out of an individual plan, it's $2,400, and that's broken out over the course of 2 years. You know, it was well received. People were happy about it. But we just, we tell people about it, you know, especially during open enrollment, I say, you know, at the bottom of my 3-page email saying, you know, don't forget we have the opt-out program. You know, it just doesn't seem to have the draw. So I don't know if that tells me that our coverage actually is more affordable and better than perhaps somebody can obtain from another family member, especially during open enrollment, or it's just, it's a comfort factor to stay where we are. We do promote it. Sometimes somebody will, you know, come in and say, you know, I have coverage, I got it through my spouse. You don't even know about the opt-out, but like, you know, of course we want to let them know, because what you don't want is to find out 8 months later, hey, I was available, you know, I was eligible for an opt-out program, so we'll do it then, but it doesn't seem to have the draw that it did in the beginning. You know, it's not for lack of trying. I mean, we also don't even know about the opt-out, but it's similar to that. We offer reimbursements for in and outpatient co-pays, as well as high-tech imaging payments, and it doesn't seem, as much as we try. I mean, I think some of my counselors here are aware of it, right? We certainly try to get the word out to people. There are some benefits that we do offer that just don't seem to make the forefront. High-tech imaging.
Those rebate numbers you mentioned for specific services, are those included in this opt-out number, or is that separate?
Are aware of it, right? We certainly try to get the word out to people. There are some benefits that we do offer that just don't seem to make the forefront. Actually, it's part of the overall health insurance number, and that's
included in this
part of that. It's not part of
number,
it.
is that separate?
Are aware of it, right? We certainly try
And
to get the
so
word out.
this number really represents money that we've made available to staff who may choose to opt out, essentially to incentivize them to opt out.
Yes, part of the overall health insurance number, and that's
Okay, I'm curious how that,
part
I
of
mean,
that. It's not part of it.
we're talking about the money, but I'm curious how that interacts with the state requirement to have insurance. This number really represents money that we've made available to staff who may choose to opt out, essentially to
Right, and
incentivize them
if
to
you have
opt out.
insurance with us, we're not even able to unenroll somebody unless we can
I'm curious how
provide
that-
proof
I
that
mean,
they have coverage someplace else.
We're
So
talking
we
about the money,
require
but I'm
that piece
curious
as
how
well.
that interacts with the state requirement to have insurance. This number really represents money that we've made available to staff who may choose to opt out,
Thank you,
essentially
Jim.
to
Right, and if you have insurance with us,
I was at one of
we're
the
not even
educational
able to
meetings. It was
unenroll
really
somebody
great.
unless we can
I was
curious
provide
how that
proof
to
that they have
see,
coverage
former
someplace else.
We're
So
talking
we
about the
require
money, but
that
I'm
piece
curious
as
how
well.
that
do the
interacts with the
GIC
state
version
requirement to have
for
insurance. This
an
number
hour.
really represents money that we've made
Um,
available to
And I
staff
do
who may
want
choose
to
to opt out,
commend the
essentially to
Right, and
GIC
if
this
you have
year.
insurance with us,
I was at one of
we're
the
not even
educational
able to
meetings.
unenroll
Terrific.
somebody
I mean,
unless we
they've
can
added some
provide
stuff
proof
to
that they have
see,
coverage someplace
that
else. So
I
we
know
require
for
that
me
piece as
personally,
well.
the GIC version are things that I had in my previous insurance that I was able to have. So, and I do want to commend the GIC this year. Robust and I was at one of the educational meetings. Terrific. I mean, they've added some stuff to see that I know for me personally, the GIC version
Counselor
are
Kwasniewski.
I had in my previous insurance that I was.
I'm a fan of Lisa.
I think it's commend the GIC.
I've been employed by the city for many, many years, and sometimes talking insurance is sometimes talking a different language. And if there's one thing I know, it's Lisa understands, and she speaks the language incredibly well. She knows how to navigate the system really good. My only comment is if anybody has any questions about health insurance and what's best for them, Lisa goes above and beyond to make sure that people know what exactly. And if there's one thing I know, it's Lisa what exactly is the best plan for them. So again, once again, Lisa, thank you for all you've done for everybody. My only comment is if anybody has any questions about health insurance and what's best for them, Lisa goes above and beyond to make sure that people
Thank
know
you, Chair McLean. My question is on the comparison on other companies and other cities in town. They're using different companies. I imagine that we just 1980. I mean, in 2023 we had a new company for a comparison on other companies. What's the name of the company now that we're using? They're using the carrier. Who is the one that provided the? Imagine the insurance. What is the insurance company that provide? I mean, in 2023 we had a new company for.
Our health insurance is provided through the Group Insurance Commission. That's the state agency. I usually call that the umbrella.
Yeah.
And all the
Who is the
different
one that
pieces
provided
underneath are Fallon, well, it doesn't have Fallon
the
anymore.
insurance?
Tufts,
What is the
anymore
insurance
either.
company that would buy? I mean,
Unicare, MGB, Harvard, and
Insurance Commission,
the
that's the
one
state
now,
agency. I usually call that the umbrella.
Carrier? Yeah.
And all
Who
the
is the
different
one to
pieces
provide the
underneath are,
No.
Fallon.
You're talking health insurance? I'm sorry,
Insurance.
health insurance or
What is
life
the insurance
insurance?
company that would buy?
Yep, so we're with the
Unicare,
Group Insurance
MGB,
Commission. They've got several
Harvard,
plans. Our
and
contract is with the GIC, and then through them, we offer the
Carrier?
different
all
plans.
the
Who is the
different
one?
pieces
And my question is
underneath are,
regarding to,
Fallon.
You're
we
talking health
recently
insurance?
moved to
I'm sorry,
GIC.
health insurance or life insurance?
Like you say right here, since
So
April
we're with the
30th,
Insurance Commission.
2023,
They've got
and we see
several
the number
plans.
increase on
Our
enrollment.
contract is with the
That's what it
GIC,
say right here on
and
the
then
book.
through them, we offer the different.
Significant budget and staffing change on page 570.
Health insurance
The
or
beginning
life
of the,
insurance?
like you say right here, employee insurance rate.
April 30th, we had 1,800, is that one under the significant budget and staffing changes?
Yeah, that means we had a lower number before. Significant budget, now we had a significant increase, 570.
No, this is the amount of people that are enrolled in our health insurance plans.
I understand,
we had
but I mean, it was lower than that before we joined the CIG. Yeah, that means
No,
we
I
had a
mean,
lower
that number is
before.
almost this
Now
855.
we
It's
had a
funny because I looked at last
570.
year's, when I wrote this on April 30th,
enrolled in our health insurance.
that was the amount of people that we had. That's who we
But I
had
mean, it was
paid
lower than that before
for
we
on our
joined the
GIC
CIG.
bill.
Yeah,
I actually looked at last
had a
May
lower
that
number before.
and this current year, and maybe there's a swing of maybe 5 or 10,
when I wrote this
5
on
or
April
10
30th,
bodies, whether they're
enrolled in our
employees or
health insurance. That's the
retirees. So
amount of
this
people we had.
this
That's who we had,
encompasses all
lower than that
employees and
before.
retirees. But when I say as of April 30th, that's when I wrote
at
this.
last
So I was under the
May,
impression that the
and
numbers of
this current
enrollees
year,
increased
maybe
because
there's
we
a swing
switched
of
from
maybe
company
5 or
to
10,
when I wrote
this,
5 or
no,
10
no,
bodies,
no,
whether
I'm
they're
sorry.
employees
Yeah,
or
no, we've been
retirees.
with the GIC
since 2012. It was just that I was trying to point out that we had 1,855 enrollees, and that's just subscribers. That doesn't mean, family members and the amount of lives that and bodies that we're covering. And then I just broke it out by,
Yeah, no, we've been with the
department,
GIC
and
since
that's what I
2012.
It was just that I was trying to point out that we had 1,855 enrollees, and that's just subscribers. That doesn't mean, family members.
enrollee because we made some change.
Bodies that we're covering. It stays pretty consistent. When I look, like I said, when I looked at, before I came here tonight to see if there was any change from the April enrollment to May, there's a very small swing, and it's still always been up over 1,800.
Enrollee because we made some change.
Bodies that we're covering. It stays pretty consistent. When I look, like I said, when I looked at, before I came here tonight to see if there was any change from the April enrollment to May,
I would hope
there's a
that it would
very
stay
small
fairly
swing,
consistent. I think
and it's still
we've
always
heard
been up
noted a
over
few times
1,800.
that there was an effort to sort of maintain the full-time equivalency
It
of
stays pretty
staff
consistent.
at the city level.
When I look,
So
like I said, when I looked at,
I would hope that that would be reflected in the
before I
numbers of
came here tonight to
enrollees
see if there was
and
any
our
change
insurance
from
as
the
well.
April enrollment to
I
May.
would,
There's
I
a
will
very
say,
small swing,
I'm grateful
and
to
it's
hear
still
that
always been up over
you
1,800.
did your due diligence and went out to bid and made an informed decision to stick with the GIC. Always a good idea, especially given the situation that we exist in now, where our healthcare costs continue to escalate. I will say, I'm grateful to hear. I do want to do your due diligence and put in a little plug. It's not totally a question, but GIC. I do think it's important to, along with that, keep a close eye on exactly what is being offered. I myself am not enrolled in the city of Salem's GIC coverage, but I am enrolled in GIC coverage for spouse. Not totally a question, but some of the changes that occurred in the marketplace really impacted our coverage in some really negative ways. And so I just want to make sure that we are enrolled in this, being careful about paying attention to some of the things we often discuss in these chambers relative to mental health care, relative to support of our queer community, and making sure that we're providing people sort of the coverage that they need for their health, making sure that we're keeping the floor under what is actually available to our city employees, even if that may mean having to make some tough choices about the health care relative to support of our queer community. I do appreciate you doing your due diligence and sure that you're providing people sort of the coverage that they need for their health, making sure that
This is one thing I really learned when we moved from, we were with Maya back in 2000. But prior to that, was that this is, this is number one. People want to make sure they can go to their doctor and they're covered. And, what is the copay? What does tiering mean? All of that stuff can be, Maya can be a little frightening. But, once you sort of just break it down in pieces, was that explain it it, I think that goes a long way. And the other thing that we do all with, because we have our workers' compensation insurance with Maya, we also have an employee assistance program. And so, we also put that information out to people, on a regular basis, and that's offered free of charge to employees 24/7, 365 days a year, because we have our workers' compensation insurance with Maya. We also have, and that touches on employees for pretty much everything. It doesn't have to be like healthcare. We also put that information out to people, things going on a regular basis, and that's offered free of charge coverage to employees 24/7. First 3 visits or employees in consults on the phone, or if they do even in person. Also, and that touches on employees for pretty much everything. Employee with a local provider. We also put that information out to people, things going on a regular basis, and that's offered free of charge coverage to
comments or
employees
questions?
24/7.
Seeing none, I'll take a motion.
Visits or employees in consults on the phone,
Hapworth.
or if they do even in person.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the employee insurance benefits total in the amount of $16,949,561.
I wish that was 1,000.
Sorry,
Seeing none, I'll take
$16,949,561.
Councilor Hopworth makes a motion to approve the employee insurance benefit expenditure number of $16,949,561, seconded by Councilor Stott. All those in favor?
Sorry.
Three plus my own, the matter carries.
$16,949,561.
Thank you so much for walking through all of that. Councilor Hopworth makes a motion to approve the employee insurance benefit expenditure number of $16,949,561, seconded by Councilor Stott. All those in favor?
Sorry.
So, is everybody okay to move on? Thank you so much for walking through all of that. Hopworth makes a motion. Biological recess. Insurance benefit expenditure number of $16,949,561, seconded by Councilor Stott. We will next hear from our police. So, is everybody okay to move on? Thank you so much for walking through all of that. Hopworth makes a motion. Biological recess. Insurance benefit expenditure number of $16,949,561, seconded by Councilor Stott. We will next hear from our police. So, let's take a 3-minute recess. Thank you so much for walking through all of that. Anybody? Biological recess. Insurance benefit expenditure number of $16,949,561, seconded by Councilor Stott. We will next hear from our police. So, let's take a 3-minute recess. Thank you so much for walking through all of that. Anybody? Biological recess. Insurance benefit expenditure number of $16,949,561, seconded by Councilor Stott. We will next hear from our police. So, let's take a 3-minute recess. Thank you so much for walking through all of that. Anybody? Biological recess. Insurance benefit expenditure number of $16,949,561, seconded by Councilor Stott. We will next hear from our police. So, let's take a 3-minute recess. Thank you so much for walking through all of that. Anybody? Biological recess. Insurance benefit expenditure number of $16,949,561, seconded by Councilor Stott. We will next hear from our police. So, let's take a 3-minute recess. Thank you so much for walking through all of that. Anybody? Biological recess. Insurance benefit expenditure number of $16,949,561, seconded by Councilor Stott. We will next hear from our police. So, let's take a 3-minute recess. Thank you so much for walking through all of that. Anybody? Biological recess. Insurance benefit expenditure number of $16,949,561, seconded by Councilor Stott. We will next hear from our police. So, let's take a 3-minute recess. Thank you so much for walking through all of that. Anybody? Biological recess. Insurance benefit expenditure number of $16,949,561, seconded by Councilor Stott. We will next hear from our police. So, let's take a 3-minute recess. Thank you so much for walking through all of that. Anybody? Biological recess. Insurance benefit expenditure number of $16,949,561, seconded by Councilor Stott. We will next hear from our police. We are back. I think the feed is picking up. There we go. All right. And we have public safety coming up, starting with our police department. Chief Miller, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'd like to start, as others have, with the mission of the Salem Police Department.
There we go.
Which is to protect the people of Salem and its visitors and to fairly uphold the law.
Starting with our police department.
We can get into all the ways
Chief
that
Miller,
we
you have
do
the
that
floor.
a little bit later. Thank you. I bring to you tonight a raft of good news and one piece, the requested increase that will be rather bitter. Just to protect the people of Salem. Salem Police Department has had a number of accomplishments that I'd like to highlight. In my mind, the two most important measures of a department are actual public safety I bring to you and the quality of the service that the department provides. The requested increase. One big measure of public safety is the crime rate, and it is significantly down for the second year in a row. One measure of our ability to deliver timely, quality service, actual public safety, is our personnel count. And I'm very happy to report for the first time since my one big measure of public safety, Salem Police Department is at full significantly down for the second year in a row. For a significant portion of the past 2 years, we've been down as many as 15 officers. Public safety is our personnel. Running the department with a reduced I'm very happy to report for the presents a number of challenges with which I'm sure you're familiar from all the times that I've had to explain shortfalls to this committee or this council. For a significant portion of the past 2 years, I'm sorry, but down as many as 15 officers. Public safety is our personnel. Running the department with a reduced. As I've explained, one of the most presents a number of obligations, which I'm sure is to answer 911 that I've had to explain. That's the way people still call for help in our modern society. And we have to have the personnel to respond to people who need help. The minimum manning to do, as I've explained, between frontline officers, dispatchers, patrol officers, officers in charge, and schedulers. That's up to the majority of call for personnel. If you add the support staff for just that function of the department, people who need help, there are precious few left for community outreach, between dedicated traffic enforcement, dispatch, criminal investigations, event planning, dogs. That's up to the majority of call for personnel. Recruitment. If you add the continuing education for officers and other absolutely necessary forms of enrichment and training outreach, dedicated traffic, having the benefit of the number of officers that was determined in the last personnel study, which was admittedly some time ago. Recruitment will give us much more leeway to accomplish those tasks that I would describe as problem solving. That is, tasks where we can address a problem more than we're addressing the number of officers that was determined in the last personnel study. I'm also very proud to report to you that among the officers that I've hired will give us much more leeway to accomplish 2 tasks that I would describe. 8 Latino officers. That is, and 5 women. Those more than we're addressing the number of officers. It's not controversial to say that a police department should represent that I've hired the population it serves. And I will allow that we're not there yet, particularly not for women. And this is a clear indication that the Salem Police Department is moving in the right direction. It's not controversial to say that a police in recognizing that the funding for the department is finite and represents a burden for Salem. And I will allow that we're not. I've continued my predecessor's quest for outside sources. We receive money from approximately 18 state and local grants that help fund everything from our 911 dispatchers, recognizing ballistic vests, for the department, our body-worn cameras, and that's just to name a few. And I will allow that we're not. I've continued. Tonight, I want to highlight 2 other opportunities the department has enjoyed. We received money from last year. I was approached by Dr. Sarah Abbott, director of the Center for Crisis Response and Behavioral Health at William James College in New body-worn cameras, and that's with the Salem Police, like a scholarship for one of our officers. Tonight, I want to highlight 2 other opportunities the department has enjoyed. Yes, we last year I was approached by Dr. Sarah. I'm very proud that Officer Neil Sicard of our Community Impact Center, along with our mental health clinician Ben Morgan, completed over 150 hours of Salem Police, like a scholarship, 200 hours one of our officers. Tonight I want to highlight and it's rather grueling 24-hour training certification. Yes, we would. I know I don't need to tell you, I'm very proud that Officer Neil Sicard, a staggering number of our calls for help, along with our mental health. Having Officer Sicard is our point man and will improve our service. 200 hours one of our officers. On a different public safety, it's rather grueling. I was approached by some friends in the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. I know I don't need to tell you, with the Salem Police, like a dog trained to detect bombs and guns, along with officer training at no cost to Salem, is our point man and will improve our service. Yes, we would. I'm very happy to tell you that Officer Keegan Stowe Stokes has completed a grueling 10-week program in Virginia and has returned to us with his new partner, Madden. Madden is a very handsome black Labrador retriever. I will bring him to visit soon. Yes, we would. I did not bring him tonight because I thought it would not fair. Stokes has completed a grueling 10-week program in Virginia. I've spoken before about the partnership with the members of this council that I feel has made possible other department advancements. Body-worn cameras, a refreshed fleet of more efficient cruisers, improving our outdated radio system, the original creation of our mental health clinician program, and 100. I've spoken before about the partnership with. It is for that reason I'm hesitant to come with other departments as large a request as I am. Body-worn cameras, but the truth is that it is for me unavoidable. Improving roughly 90% of the increase in my budget is the original creation of contractual increases in pay and benefits from recent retroactive settlements. It is for that reason I'm along with a return to full staffing. The remaining 2% is largely due to greater costs due to inflation. For me, unavoidable. Improving roughly 90% of the increase in my budget is the original creation of contractual increases in pay and benefits from recent retroactive settlements. It is for that reason I'm along with a return to full staffing.
You touched on the diversity.
The remaining 2% is largely due to greater
hires.
costs.
Can you kind of wrap that up department-wide?
Pause here.
And do you also have any sort of a comparison to state numbers also?
Approximate comparison. Of the 95 officers, remaining Salem is largely
Can you kind of wrap
with
that up
those
department-wide?
additions. 10 are women.
And do you also have any sort of a
That's about
comparison to
10.42%.
state numbers also?
And frankly, that's not approximate. Statewide is about 13%. That does put us significantly ahead of some of our neighbors. With those additions, and the best of our neighbors was Lynn, and they're ahead of us by about half. And frankly, that's approximate. But statewide, I feel we're 13%. That does put us significantly ahead of some of our neighbors in terms of Latino officers. And the best of our neighbors was Lynn, and those hires put the Salem Police Department at approximately 16.7%. Statewide, that's very close to a state average. Also much better than some of our neighbors, not nearly as good as some of our others. A lot of it does depend on that local population and approximately draw from statewide. In fact, that's very close to a state average. Much closer. Also much better. The demographics in Salem, not nearly demographics of women in Salem. A lot of it does but room for improvement on local population. But as I said, I love the
Thank you. What kind of outreach efforts are you doing?
I think I would describe our outreach efforts on two fronts. The first is job fairs, colleges, community events, all of which I try to send my recruiting team to. But the other is much more endemic. Right? If we imagine on two fronts, the tradition of people of Irish descent joining the police, particularly in New York City and Boston, all of which that didn't come about because the police department did great recruiting in the Irish American. But the other is came about because people of Irish descent joined those departments and went home and told their friends and neighbors and relatives, hey, this is a great job, you should come join the city in Boston. And that's something that I'm trying very hard to create within the same including in the Irish American. I want members of, all members of the police department to join those departments, try to communicate to those groups in the department where I'd like to see an increase. And that's something that how valuable they are. I try to shepherd their advancement in the department. And I try to make sure that join particularly try to communicate to those
cameras for parks. You touched on that in your narrative and the budget. Is there any plans for cameras for specifically two parks that I know of, High Street Park and Castle Hill Park?
So we've met with some problem as with so many other technological issues. Right, the pipeline slows us down a little bit. But Castle Hill is in the pipeline.
That I know of, High Street Park and Castle Hill Park.
And I'm sorry, what was the other one you asked for? We have High Street is not in the pipeline, but we do have money in this year's, money left over in this year. The current Castle Hill is in the capital improvement budget.
And they're both kind of hidden.
Sorry, what was the other one you asked for?
Would be helpful.
Unfortunately, we're also coming up on time. We do have money, the time to replace some of the cameras. Money left over in installed in the past is coming due. So it's there's sort of two fronts there, but I agree on both those parts.
Is there any grant funding for things like that?
We have also security grant money in the past. Generally, that's been more directed towards money left over in the fort. But where that can be sort of two fronts there, but horse traded, if you will. We try. We have also security grant
The
money.
data that it was provided
Generally,
on
that's
page
been more
593,
directed towards money left over in
unfortunately and disappointingly, there's no
where
FY
that can be
23
sort of two fronts there,
numbers
but horse
provided.
traded, we try. My page numbering is
The data that it was provided on page 593.
You're talking about the pie chart.
Unfortunately and disappointingly, there's no
Okay.
23
Yes.
numbers provided.
2023 is it's difficult to provide consistent numbers because in some cases we're months behind. You're talking about I can give you a rough estimate if there's something.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
I'm curious about
yes.
numbers.
2023 is traffic enforcement. So one statistic that this doesn't show is the ratio of written warnings to citations. Our written citations are coming up, even with the dip that we've seen this year. So I see the amount of fines ratio as increasing. But I'm also happy to report that citation is on its way up. So I expect not a huge increase, but a significant increase that we've seen over the 2020. I see the amount of in both regards. Fines levied is increased, actual citations. But I'm also happy.
So the citations have actually been going down since 2020.
Not a huge increase, but
So you're saying that these are just the fined citations and not necessarily the written warnings?
I believe that number includes both actual citations. In other words, those are all written instruments handed out, citations and written warnings. I think citation violations. So that's including
and not necessarily the
it's
written
including all written
warnings.
violations. I believe that number includes both. It's slightly deceptive. Those are all written instruments handed out, citations and written warnings. I think
So what do you think the reason is for
citation
that drop
violations.
over the past
That's
couple of years?
including,
And not necessarily
it's including all. I think there are a number of chefs in that kitchen. It's slightly, I hesitate to simply blame the pandemic, but of course the pandemic has had something to do with it.
what do you think
Officers
the
were
reason is
encouraged
for
to
that
only
drop
make
over the past
contact
couple of
where
years?
necessary. The pandemic, in terms of law enforcement, in terms of traffic enforcement, has been over for a little while, and so we didn't see as much of an increase as I would hope in there. My traffic unit, that is, those officers permanently assigned to the pandemic, has been low for a while. Dan Mazzola was planning on retiring and was killed, but he was a member of that unit. And then my traffic unit that brought us down to from 4 patrol officers to 2. Again, I'm happy to report that I assigned another in January. And was planning on retiring another killed, but he probably member of that unit. Bringing us back to where we were. That brought us down to or I should say before we were patrol officers to 2.
I had heard one of your officers say that there's a monthly focus on enforcement. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I receive a report every month compiled about all of the car stops we do, all of those written warnings we do, and those citations.
One of your officers say that there's a monthly focus on enforcement. I interpreted it as this month we're going to focus on like people not wearing seatbelts or people holding cell phones.
That's a little different. So we receive grant money to do some traffic enforcement. And each month that focus changes. So as you say, it might be distracted driving one month.
We're going to
It might
focus
be,
on like
failure
people
to
not wearing seatbelts or people holding cell phones.
That's a little different. So
pedestrians
we
or
receive grant money to do some traffic enforcement.
Do you ever
Each
publicize
month
those numbers?
That focus changes. We have not during, say, it might be distracted driving one month.
We're going to
It might
focus
be,
on like
failure
here's where I'm coming from, and then you can think about it.
That's a little
There's
different.
always
So
the,
we receive grant
I
money
hear a
to do
lot
some
that
traffic
people don't see
enforcement.
enforcement,
Each
right?
month
And
that,
it's certainly not reported in the newspaper
during, say,
to,
might
I'm
be
sure, to the
distracted
level
driving
that it's done. I think it would be informative for people to know that this month's focus was seatbelt violations, and this is how many warnings we had to give out or whatever. I mean, I think that shows that you're focusing on, I'm sure, to the level traffic enforcement done. I think it would be
Well,
informative for
I
people
too
to
have heard
know
those complaints that there
this
isn't.
this month's focus was
It's one of the reasons for the
seatbelt
transfers into
violations,
that
and
unit.
this is how many
Offhand, I certainly
warnings we
don't
had to
see
give
a
out or
problem with
whatever.
that.
I mean, I think that shows that you're focusing
It's
on,
not,
I'm
we're
sure,
not giving out the names
the
of people
traffic
who are stopped.
enforcement
So
done. It's just numbers.
well, I too have heard those complaints that there isn't.
This month's focus was
It's one of the reasons for the
seatbelt
transfers
violations,
into that
and
unit.
this is how many
Offhand, I certainly
warnings we
don't
had to
see a
give out or
problem with
whatever.
that.
I mean, I think that shows that you're
The
focusing
animal
on
care and
We're not giving out the
control,
names of people who are stopped.
the asked for number was 13,000 and the budget is 7,000.
And
Can you talk about that?
that number represents two different purposes of that money. Some of that money goes to animals that come into
Animal
custody
care
of
and
the police
control.
department, a stray dog.
The
for
asked
instance.
for number was
And then some of that money
13,000
was
and
going
the budget
to
is 7,000.
the care and
you
feeding
talk
of
about
those new
that?
police canines. That number represents two different purposes of the care and the feeding of the canines and other come into equipment stuff. Stray dogs being taken care of. And then some of that money was going to the care and feeding of those new police canines. That number represents two different purposes of the care and the feeding of the canines and other come into equipment stuff.
so that doesn't have anything to do with the animal control officer.
And then some of
And
that money it doesn't, well, the remaining money is for use of the animal control officer in caring for those.
just in caring for animals. Okay.
Other
So my question is there a budget or is there a budget item for education
it doesn't, well,
programs
the remaining
by
money
the
is
animal control
for use of
officer?
the animal control officer in
Specifically,
caring for those-
we have a
for those.
coyote problem right now, and I know that he's put up posters, but it's not enough. I think that is there a budget the whole feeding of wildlife, we need a whole campaign around that. Programs
So
by
the,
animal control
I think
officer.
the posters and such that the animal control
We have
officer
a
do come out
coyote
of the
problem
regular
right
pension
now, and I
costs.
know that he's put up posters,
Um,
but it's not enough.
education around coyotes,
Feeding
I
of
think, is
wildlife,
important.
we need a whole campaign around that.
We've employed an
Programs
additional,
by
so
the
the,
animal control
I think
officer.
the posters and specifically the guard patrol.
We have a coyote problem right now, and I know that he's put up posters, but it's not enough.
Well, education around
Feeding
coyotes
of
encounters in
wildlife,
the
we need a whole campaign around that.
try to employ
Programs
and to try to do
by
something
the
about it.
animal control
I think
officer.
the posters and specifically
We have a coyote
identifying
problem right
doing
now, and I
that
know
are
that he's put up posters, but
strongly.
it's not
It's
enough.
not simply coyote. Well, education around coyotes,
Feeding
some
of
coyotes was
wildlife,
harmful.
we need a whole campaign around that.
Try to employ
Programs
and to try to do something
by
about
the
it.
animal control
I think
officer.
The wellness
specifically
line item was zeroed out.
What does that cover?
that has to do with a wellness stipend that was eliminated as part of that new contract.
And drones and the wellness license plate reader line item were zeroed out.
Those were transferred to the capital. That has to do with a wellness stipend that was eliminated as part of that new contract.
Councilor Dominguez.
And
you,
drones
Chair McLean.
and
Thank you, Chief Lucas
the
Miller,
wellness license
been
plate
here.
reader
Thank you
line
for
item zeroed out.
Those
dedication and work that you have done with the community. I had to say that very impressed with the level of participation that you have,
And drones
not only on one community in the city,
Miller license
and
plate
also for
zeroed out.
I had to personally thank you for work that you have done, making the level of diversity. I had to say that and increase the level of diversity in the force, which is very important. I think that reflects not only in Salem community in the entire city. And also my question, I had three questions for you. My first one is on, making the level on-point building down at the point and increase the level that the utilization of the building is not really used to the level of capacity you have. And I had intention to go back to my first that side and try to create any type of program, especially now in summertime, and increase the level that the utilization of the building
Point as a building is being transferred to the school
level of capacity you have. And I had
as
intention
sort of
to
proprietorship.
go back to
The police
that
department
side
will
and try
maintain a
to
presence there.
create any type
I
of
believe
program,
the
especially now in summertime.
planning on
Increase the
using
level
it
that
as a
utilization of the building
and so our SROs will have a presence there to participate
level of
in that.
capacity you have. And I had intention
As sort of
to
in addition,
go back
we've
to
kind of held out the
side
ability
and
to increase our presence
create
there.
any type of program, especially now in
Previously, I'd
summertime.
said that again, we don't have the personnel, but now that I do have more personnel, I can see trying to steal back. In addition,
I would like to see something like that. The other thing I wanted to ask you is on bike patrol.
We don't have the
In the entire
personnel,
city,
but now that
especially
I
in
do have
summertime. Are you willing to bring that program back to?
very much so. So, the
I would like to see something.
the ways in which
that.
I'm
The other thing I wanted
increasing
to ask
bicycle
you is
patrol,
on
aside
bike
from
patrol,
buying some more bicycles,
entire
the
city, especially in
SROs over
summertime.
the summer when they're not
Are you willing
assigned to
to bring
schools
that
will be
program back
performing
to?
patrol on very much so. Last summer, again, due to personnel shortages, we had to put them in
I would like to see
the
something.
ways in which
The
I'm
other thing I
increasing
wanted to ask
bicycle
you is
patrol,
on
aside
bike
from leeway
patrol,
so they'll go on to bikes.
entire
The
city,
SROs in addition, we
summertime.
over the summer
Are you
when they're not assigned
willing to bring that
positions
program
within
back
the
to?
community impact. Very much so. Last summer again. So these will be these will be additional community impact officers, but they will perform their CIU duties from bicycle when the weather allows. I'm not going to make them ride around in February, but for as long as the weather allows, they'll work sort of a modified afternoon tour. So on bicycle and doing CIU, but they will perform their CIU responsibility from bicycle when the weather allows. I'm not going to make them ride around. One of them is out. A member for as long as the weather allows, they'll work bicycle and vice versa. When on bicycle and doing CIU, but they will fulfill their CIU responsibility. So I hope it improves the overall response of CIU, and at the same time, bicycle and vice versa.
Thank you. I mean, the way I kind of direct my two questions kind of lead me to the last one that I have. I know sometimes increase the level of more active police force in different areas of our city. I mean, it's not a secret that we have so many youth that kind of direct they out of school, kind of leave me. They tend to be more active during some time. Sometimes increase based on the budget, more total that you present force here in different areas. Do you think that you have enough resources to deal with any unexpected situation that we might have? Sometimes say based on the budget, we have more total that you increase of force here in different areas. Delinquency. Do you think that you have enough resources that you deal with any enough for you to cover any unexpected situation that we might have? Sometimes say
As I said,
based on the budget,
for me, it's a dramatic increase in personnel since I've been here. And so I'm very optimistic about our ability to do what we've been doing all along and do it even better with those more officers. Are there eventualities? Are there disturbances in Salem? To me, it's a dramatic increase. Might be more than we can handle with a number of officers. And so I'm very optimistic. That is possible, but of course we have to do what we've been doing very robust and do it even better with those law enforcement counsel. Are there eventualities? Are there disturbances in Salem? To me, spur of the moment might be more than we can handle with a number of officers. If you're asking me, that is possible. But of course we have to do what we. I'm always going to be tempted to say no. I want more. But let's see how well we can do it full staff, and we can all talk. Spur of the moment might be more than we can handle.
Thank you.
If you're asking me, that is who I have, but of course we have
Councilor
two
Stubbs.
ways. I'm always going to be tempted to say, no, I want more.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
But
Thank you,
let's
Keith,
see
for
how well
coming in
we
this
can do
evening
our
and
full staff.
providing all the information, lots of data. It's good to see the staffing is back up as needed. I just have a few questions. A lot of them were already answered. My first question, I may have missed this last year, so apologies if this is repetitive, but I noticed that the arms and ammunition line item was, it looks like it was adjusted up fairly high for last year to 57,000 versus the 35 that was approved. And then that 35 that was approved was adjusted high from the previous year of 18,000. So can you just explain that? But I noticed that the arms and ammunition line item
goes through the
was,
police academy.
it
It's
looks
very
like it was
intensive as far as
adjusted
requiring
fairly high for last year to
typically
57,000
an
versus
officer
the
fired a
35 that was
certain
approved. And then that 35 that was approved was
My
adjusted high from the previous year of 18,000.
when an officer goes through the academy, reflects rising higher. When an officer goes through the academy, it's very intensive as far as requiring. So that reflects, typically an officer fires a
35 that was approved, and then that 35 that was approved was adjusted high from the previous year of 18,000.
when an officer goes through
Thank
the
you.
academy.
Is there a range on site at the station?
There is a range on the third floor of the station. It is slightly limited in that one can only use what they call frangible ammunition, which is lead-free ammunition that kind of explodes into dust.
Is there a range on site at the station?
There is a range on the third floor of the station. It works very well for us. It is slightly limited in that one can only use what they call frangible ammunition, which is lead-free ammunition that kind of explodes into dust.
Is there a range on site at the station? A few questions moving back to the traffic and parking enforcement and the objectives there, along with the staffing that's there. So you keep saying transfers into the unit to level set back to 4, but we're really just level setting to where we should have been. Correct? If we were at 4. Back to the traffic and parking enforcement and the objectives there, along with the staffing that's there. So you keep saying transfers into the unit to level set back to 4, but we're really just have no plans of increasing that. We're correct if we were at 4.
I'm not foreclosing on the idea, but
objectives there.
I don't want to suggest that I'm experimenting with the police department, but I do like to make these personnel changes. Listen, relatively slow pace. I'm not foreclosing on the idea.
I was also curious with there were 2 lines in the objectives, the selective enforcement operations.
I want to suggest that I'm experimenting.
So I'm assuming that was the reference back to the
listen, relatively slow
monthly
I'm not foreclosing on the idea.
Topics. But then there was another line about a 59,000 municipal road safety grant, which will fund additional selective enforcement operations, pedestrian and bike safety education events, and the distribution of safety materials to pedestrians and cyclists. I was wondering how that, then there was another line about has been spent, and if there has been there's any data around which will fund where that was selected enforcement operations, pedestrian and bike safety education
there
events.
is both grant money
And the distribution
to
of
do
safety
that
materials
directed
to
enforcement,
pedestrians
and then
and
we spend
cyclists. I was
some
wondering how that, then there was another line has
For
been spent,
instance,
and if there has been
where
any, there's any data around which will fund where that was selected enforcement
I think there's
operations, pedestrian and bike safety education
there is
events.
both grant money
And the
to do
distribution of safety
that, so that's
materials to pedestrians and cyclists. I was wondering how that, then there was another line has been spent. My next question is, when will bike lane enforcement start? Where that was selected
would that be bicycles misbehaving in the bike lane or cars?
I guess both, yes. So obviously North Street is a hot topic, but I think a large portion of that is both for behaving correctly within it. But I will say, as someone that walks, rides, and wheels down North Street on a daily basis, there's zero enforcement of it that I have seen. So I'm curious if there's any data around citations for bike lane enforcement when it comes to vehicles parking in the bike lane, staying in the bike lane, or just blatantly ignoring the wheels down North Street on a daily basis.
I don't have
There's
any
zero
research.
enforcement of it that I have seen. So I'm curious if there's any data around citations for bike lane enforcement when it comes to vehicles parking in the bike lane, staying in the bike lane, or just blatantly ignoring the wheels down North Street on a daily basis. There's zero enforcement. Happens all the time, and I see it every day, and I see patrol officers drive by and they do not enforce, which I'm not saying that they need to be enforcing, but it's doubly frustrating. So I think it has to be a perhaps a monthly quota or happens all the time, and a selected enforcement operation, perhaps some education of all parties of the enforcement should be done there.
I'm happy to make it.
It's doubly frustrating. So I think it has to be a perhaps a monthly quota or happens all the time, and I see selected enforcement operation, perhaps some education of parties of the enforcement should be done there.
I'm happy to make it.
It's doubly frustrating. My day job is sales, so I say quotas all the time. I will also note that I have seen bike patrols around the city recently, so thank you for that. That's super exciting to see. And I really hope, along with that, that the driving of the patrol cars down Essex Street pedestrian simmers down, because I think that I see that often. I have seen of the patrol cars driving down the pedestrian lane. Again, I understand that it might happen or it might be a necessity weather-wise, but I really hope, think it should be part of a regular patrol driving in a vehicle, in the patrol vehicles. I'm much more appreciative. I love seeing them out there, especially with the number of crowds that we're having. Again, I understand that it might happen or it might be a necessity. And then my last question, I think it should be part of a regular kind of pinged off of a comment that you made about the school resource officers. Are those in your budget or in the school budget? Do you seeing them out there? Do you know how many there are? There are two.
Well, I should add, this year I added
and then my
a
last
sergeant,
question,
so he's not exclusively
kind of
assigned
pinged
as
off
an
of a comment that you
SRO,
made
but
about the
he is
school resource officers. Are those
can
in your
function as
budget
an
or in
SRO,
the school
and he
budget?
functions as both a supervisor to them and
Do you know how many there are? So there are two full-time in the schools.
This year
Are
I
they
added
primarily at a particular
so
school?
he's not exclusively assigned at all times to Collins,
About the
and
school resource officers? Are those
can
sorry, I
function
didn't hear.
as an
Collins.
SRO. One is assigned to Collins at all times, so if there is one, he or she is
So there are
assigned to
two
Collins. The second
full-time in
one
the
will then
schools.
be assigned to
Are they
Collins.
primarily at a particular school? So one is assigned at all times to our middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. Okay, thanks. Sorry, I didn't hear. Collins.
One is assigned to Collins at all times,
Thank you,
so
Chair
if
McLean.
there is one, he or she is
So there
assigned
are
to
two
Collins. The
full-time
second
in
one
the
will
schools.
I always have a concern.
Primarily at a particular.
that
So
if
one
we
is
have
assigned at all times to our middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grades.
What happens to the
Sorry, I
equipment?
didn't hear. Collins.
One is assigned to
Our
Collins at
first
all
responder.
times,
Thank
so
you, Chair
if
McLean.
there is one,
And your headquarters is under sea level. I always have a concern, and so probably one of the more vulnerable spots in the city. And I'm not asking a question, I'm more suggesting that we invest some time in discussion about a microgrid, which has been on the table before, so that one of the more vulnerable, it's less of a and urgency if something. I'm not asking a question, I'm more that your equipment will be operational on time. Discussion about you don't have to worry about flooding in the basement before, and so that one of the more vulnerable, less of a.
we don't have a basement.
Flooding on the first floor, but the which would be your basement operational to make sure that we also have a sustainable power source.
We don't have a basement.
So that the equipment you and the fire department is, which would be doesn't go down in case power grid does. To make sure that we also have a sustainable.
Councilor Varela.
Thank you, Chair McLean, and thank you, Chief Miller and Mayor Pangal for being here tonight. My question was about when it comes to community events and the heroin outreach. This question directed through you guys. I'm sure maybe Mayor, you'd be able to answer this here, McLean. When it comes to the allocation of abatement funds from the Johnson & Johnson case, I understand that this year, FY 2024 in the summer, will be allocated $60,000 and 87 $60,087. Is there an intent to do more when it comes to harm reduction with that money? FY 2024 in the summer will be allocated $60,000 and 87, 60,000,
The settlement funds
Is there
have not been hasn't been decided
do more when it comes to harm reduction with that money? FY 2024 in the summer.
my ask of that committee and of those funds was to take over the funding of one of my retired officers who works as an outreach specialist he was a former member of the community student, and that was what he did there. He kind of continued the funds as a was to take over the funding of and then he has been working hand in hand as Help the Streets to do outreach. What I asked for was that those funds cover his payment, but that they also fund an outreach worker who will be in a full-time. And then he has been working hand in hand, and that's what that and some Help the Streets to do outreach. What I asked we haven't yet posted the job. We covered his pay just got approved, but that they also fund I don't think that would be the exclusive purview of the police department. I think there's room for a lot of good actors in this. What I asked we haven't yet posted the job, but I also think that as I've said in other respects, the police department can't help but be involved in substance use disorder and the effects and the attempts to help people. So having a dedicated member within the police department, I think, is a good use of that money.
Happy to hear it. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing nothing further, I will accept a motion. Councilor Hepworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to accept the personnel budget in the amount of $11,846,133, and the expenditures in the amount of $957,099.
Councilor Hepworth makes a motion to accept the police personnel budget in the amount of $11,846,133, and the expenditures in the amount of $957,099 for a total of $12,803,232. Seconded by Councilor Merkel. All those in favor? 3 plus my own. It carries. Chief, is there anything that you wanted to highlight relative to the capital improvement program for the police department?
To the capital improvement program?
Yeah.
There is something. Other communities have rather vigorously discussed police appropriation of drones, and I thought it was something that I wanted to bring before the council because I want to do this I think it's a very good idea for us, but I want to do it in as transparent a way as possible. I can talk a little bit about my purposes for them if you'd like, or I can answer questions first, depending on how you'd like.
Just for people's reference, the police CIP is on page 359. If there's anything there you want to look at and ask about while we're talking about it. Any questions to what Chief Miller just raised in terms of the drones? Councilor Marcillo.
Just to be clear, this is the equipment purchase? Is that the latest?
That's correct. There are a number of applications for a police drone, and I think obviously people's imagination conjures up the most intrusive. I see primarily the reason why I most want a drone is to do searches for missing people. Right? If you imagine Salem's coastline with all its little coves, it takes a great deal of time to search for a missing person. It can be done in a much shorter time with a drone, particularly a drone outfitted with a FLIR that is a heat signature camera. So I think that's the number one reason that I'd like to get one. I recently fielded a phone call from the fire chief who asked if we had one so that he could look for brush fires during the very dry season that we've had. And also a call from the DPW director hoping to borrow one to inspect the water tower rather than having to send somebody up to the top of it. So those are just a couple of examples of the sort of the nuts and bolts reasons why I'd like to have one. But I don't want to sugarcoat that it does have more targeted law enforcement applications. One of them, and I know we've talked about this before, Salem and many other communities has a problem with people riding scooters and scooter-like vehicles in irresponsible fashion. And I've told my police officers that they're not allowed to chase such people because the results of a chase could be much more tragic than the crime itself. But putting a drone up in the air and seeing where they stop, seeing where they store their vehicles, seeing where they live, I think as long as it's done in a responsible drone flying way, could be a way to fight that particular problem. And that's, I know, something other jurisdictions have done. So that's something I'm hoping to try. And then finally, in the most sort of serious circumstance where you have somebody barricaded in a house, but you can fly a drone inside rather than have an officer stick his head in or even send in a canine, because of course the drone is much more expendable than either an officer or a dog. Again, not going to be applicable in every circumstance, but it is a tool that I would like to have in my toolbox, so to speak.
Counselor Stott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question on the body worn cameras. Are all of our sergeants outfitted with a body worn camera, or will this get us up to a?
Currently, every officer in the department, that is every sworn officer, sergeants, lieutenants, captains, has a body worn camera. There are certain assignments that aren't required to carry them at all times, like our detective squad, our community investigation division, but everybody has one and everybody on patrol wears one. The money that ongoing money is for the software necessary to keep that in good order, some of the updates, some of the improvements, replacements when they get broken, and some of the equipment that we use to trigger them. In other words, I have bought a number of devices that go on the outside of an officer's holster so that if he were to draw his gun and his body-worn camera weren't activated, it would automatically activate it, and actually those of the officers around him. But we found that they weren't quite compatible with some of our holsters, so it required some additional effort. There's also similarly for tasers, right? When an officer takes out his taser and turns the taser on, it will turn on the body-worn camera. Some of the newer tasers do that better, and I thought it would be wise to buy a few more tasers so that more patrol officers were deployed with tasers.
So if I may, so the 105 is for equipment, and also it sounds like it might be something like going forward annual maintenance fees that would
there is an annual maintenance cost.
So is that?
It's not as high as it is this year. As I said, there's some specific equipment that we would like to have to go along with the tasers that isn't required to be replaced every year, but there will be a yearly licensing cost for the software and regular, as I said, upkeep. These things do break, and when we hire new officers, generally we get, when we hired new officers this year, we had more.
Thank you. And if I may, I don't know if I missed the part about the evidence room. Is that an upgrade request?
So that is our evidence room. It's been a while since it's been upgraded, and you know, the evidence room is fine until it's not, and then when it's not, it can have catastrophic effects on criminal cases, important criminal cases. So, in my opinion, it's time we renovated. But that's not in the capital. In another part of the budget, Anna reminds me, are the lease of 2 new motorcycles that I should alert you to. Right now, the city owns 4. 2 of them are outdated to the point that they don't even have anti-lock brakes. I would like to replace those. So I think the most efficient way to do that is to lease them we have a 3-year lease, I believe. So there's a $15,000 payment that would represent the first of 3 to cover 2 motorcycles.
Maybe I misread. I thought that was zeroed out. I don't think the mayor gave you that one.
It was moved over to the treasurer's department. The treasurer has the line for leases. And so when we clarified with the chief that it was a lease and not a purchase, we moved it from the police department's budget to the treasurer's office. And so wanted to make sure it was mentioned now, since she won't be able to speak to it in a substantive manner when she presents her budget.
Thank you for that note. Just briefly on the drones, I would likewise expect that purchase would also lead to some amount of ongoing maintenance costs, probably some training costs as well, I would assume.
There's the pilot license number 107, which is a drone pilot license, has some costs associated with it. I do have 3 officers trained in that already for use when other departments bring their drones here. But if, again, talking about experimentation, I think it will remain to be seen how much mileage we get out of these drones figuratively, and whether it's worth training more officers, whether it's worth buying a more elaborate drone. One can spend a lot of money on a drone. The ones I'm proposing are comparatively cheap. And there are departments that have used them extraordinarily creatively. I was reading about a department out west that anytime that there's a 911 call, a drone goes to 100 feet above the scene and immediately gives the officers a view of what's going on the scene. That's way, way beyond our capability, but just imagining the spectrum of what the department could do with a drone, there is a lot of room there.
Mm-hmm. Since we already have some officers trained in the use of this equipment, and I guess from what you're saying, sometimes they're collaborating with other departments who have the equipment already. Is there already a policy developed for use of that equipment in Salem that you're using with your officers?
So we're writing the policy for our own drones. We kind of adhere to that other department's policy when they have come to Salem. Typically use of a drone requires 2 people. You've got to have somebody who's monitoring the drone. Current FAA law requires the drone to be within sight, literally eyesight at all times. So then it takes another officer who's looking at the screen that's showing what the drone is seeing, or perhaps manipulating the drone. So really it's a 2-man assignment. The officers that I trained were really so that department that sends somebody only needs to send 1 person, and I can provide the second person. Mm-hmm. Our policy's not finished yet, but it would certainly address things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm specifically thinking about allowable uses and what people could expect it to, what is the scope of use for the city if we bring that?
Very, very much so. Yeah.
What are variable air volume rooftop units in your?
Those are heating cooling units on the roof.
Oh, okay. Straightforward. Councilor Marcelo.
Thank you, Chair. So what nearby communities already use drones?
Tewksbury is the one that we most commonly borrow drones from.
Are you basing your policy off of theirs, or?
We will certainly look to theirs to see what wisdom is encapsulated. I think we'll also look to national police organizations like PERF to see if they have best practices. And then there's also some common sense involved that needs to be codified.
Sure. What's the cost of a drone?
The drones that I'm currently looking at range from about $2,000 to about $8,000. So I will look to get the best deal for the police department, but I'm actually envisioning buying one $2,000 drone and one $8,000.
What else is in that equipment line item?
A license plate reader.
Are the cameras in that too? The park cameras? Or are they somewhere else?
No. Yeah, I think park cameras. So the park cameras were in the current year's capital improvement budget, and we haven't spent all that money.
Oh, okay.
So hence not in this budget.
All right, thank you.
I'm just very quickly let the record show that Councilor Hapworth is no longer with us. He exited about 5 minutes ago. Any other questions for the chief about the capital improvement aspect of the police budget? Not. Thank you very much.
Thank you all, as always.
We're going to move on to fire. Chief Dion, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Counselor.
No, it's never fun to be on the trail end of these meetings, but here we are.
Call myself lucky. I was enlightened. I'll begin by again saying thanks for hearing me out. I'd like to start by just touching on a few areas in the department that have really shown some improvement. Unlike the police department, we too were deficient 15 bodies, and the chief and I started relatively around the same time. So we're deficient 15 bodies, and then we dealt with the consequences of COVID, and a significant amount of people retired as well. So in the last 2.5 years, I have hired 22 individuals, anticipating 4 mandatory retirements this year and 2 next year. I'm in the process of completing the hire of 7 additional reservists. So presently we're fully staffed, but unfortunately we're not able to count them as we'd like until they complete the academy. And the way the academy works, it's really hard to get positions there. So I'm happy to report the 8 that are in the academy presently graduating Friday. So we are effectively fully staffed and fully manned. And the manning part means we don't rely on overtime to fill those positions. And that brings a great relief. As the chief had to explain on several occasions, I've been in here looking for additional funding to cover overages for those reasons. So moving forward, it's my goal to maintain that reserve list indefinitely. With the anticipation of the mandatory retirements I explained a minute ago, and then what we anticipate next year, I will be able to put a body in that position as soon as the retirement happens. There'll be no lag time of interviews, background checks. The whole hiring process can take 4 months. And it's pretty rigorous, and every step takes a long time. So I'm happy to be at the point I'm at. Also the benefit of having a reserve list is the academy would not allow us to reserve an upcoming class, a position in an upcoming class, unless an employee was hired. And once they're hired, it could take 6 months to get them into a class, and that's absolutely ridiculous. So they've changed that rule now. So if they're on a reserve list and I can nail down a specific date that they'll be starting, they now allow me to reserve a spot at the academy. So not only will they be coming in to fill that retirement spot, my goal is to get them to the academy within 3 to 6 weeks, which is fantastic. And we're not sitting them on the side of a truck, not really counting them as a firefighter until they're firefighter certified. So the reserve list is tenfold. It's just amazing, and I'm thrilled to be in that spot. So we're done with the reserve list. It's all completed. It's certified. There's just a couple more dots to nail down and it's T to cross, and we're good to go. So with manning, as the chief mentioned, fully staffed. It's just going to allow us to run the department more effectively and more efficiently. So that's one of the best landmarks that I've hit since I started. When I came on board, I set some goals personally that I felt the department needed to reach. And I focused most of my energies on those goals. They include modernization, um, and then maintenance and just repairs. I manage 5 buildings. I am a chief and a facilities manager. We have 5 stations, and it's a big ask to maintain those buildings. Um, a lot of my efforts have been to doing exactly that. We spent a lot of money on my first year. We remodeled the exterior of the Salem Fire Station headquarters. It's beautiful now. We have a little bit more landscaping to do on the DeLand side now that their construction's done, and that building exterior is completely finished. I also have a CDBC grant for the exterior of Station 5, along with the line in last year's capital budget. That project will be commencing, and if you walk by the sidewalks at Station 5, it's just treacherous. And so in the back entrance where the firefighters come in, the landing is like that. So all that's going to be corrected. The ramp's all sunken in, and so we're going to remodel the entire exterior of that building. We're going to replace overhead doors that are huge maintenance costs and install some appropriate man doors, and the station will be as complete as station headquarters is now. Station 4, we completed the exterior. The ramp was replaced. That was done through the city engineering department. We spent a good amount of money repairing the roof on Station 5 and Station 4 to the point where we're done with roofs, I hope. The roofs has been my nemesis. It's just so much of an issue if you don't have a good roof. And then the Station 4 was painted, and one of our firefighters took the initiative to create a sign, and it was hung on the building. I don't know if anybody's seen Station 4 over on Essex Street. I'm pretty proud of it. It was all the direction of the firefighters that made it look that good. So all our stations are getting there, and that's one of my goals. The last and probably the toughest thing I'm reaching for is sustainability. We have a study that's underway with the city, as you members all know, but the buildings have been studied. We have our list, but what we need to do eventually, and I serve on the sustainability board, which I'm happy to do so, is take the next step, which we will, and start modernizing the interior, the heating, air conditioning, and electrical systems in these buildings. We have boilers that are older than they're just older than me, and I'm sure much older than that. With steam radiators, windows that you can put fingers through the cracks in the wintertime, and that's just ridiculous in some of the buildings. And that's what we're going to get through the next step with the sustainability. And I'm also going to apply aggressively for the CDBC money to hopefully get some windows done at Station 4, because they're the next building that needs windows. So that's my goal: modernize those buildings and get them cleaned up. Technology-wise, it wasn't mentioned earlier, but I'll bring it up. We are in the throes of our radio project. We have a $4.5 million radio modernization project. Police and fire have been working on, myself with the police, for over 4.5 years. We're in procurement. Construction is starting, and you'll start to see work at both police, fire, and our remote locations, installing satellite dishes, towers, in the works. And I hope to sit here by this time next year and reporting that the system is up and running. Fingers crossed. But that's a monumental event for the city to modernize this communication system. And it will eliminate our need to use Verizon copper lines, numerous repeater sites where we pay rent or locate items. And it's just costs overrun annually to maintain this antiquated equipment. Some of it was purchased in the 60s and 70s. It still has knobs and switches and tubes, and it's just we've long seen its use long ago gone. So that's a big project that's underway. I'm happy to report. So technology-wise, something we started last year and we finalized at the fire department was linking our fire dispatch CAD system with the police CAD system. And now we've gone so far as to put the displays out in the stations where in the shows that we used to watch in the 70s, and they had information on computers, and they'd have we just got it. So it's there, but it matters. It saves time. And the IT department did a study for me, and I've always proclaimed that we don't save the time, as many chiefs will tell you, racing to a call. You save the time getting out the door quicker. And it's time from the inception of the call to the dispatch of the vehicles. That was the low-hanging fruit for me. I saw so much wasted time in getting these calls
to the department and then to the firefighters and dispatch. So we've eliminated, and this is a real number, almost 3.5 to 4 minutes on every call. That's huge when someone's in cardiac arrest. All you got an incipient fire in the corner of a bedroom. That's the world, and that's what technology has done. And we're still working on the problem. The chief and I sat with the ambulance company because we think we can do better getting even that done. And we came up with a solution of installing, and our IT department just completed it, ring down lines. So instead of having to hit a button and pick up the phone and ring and ring and ring and then pass along information, now it works is we pick up the phone, they pick up the phone, we're talking. And that was installed between Atlantic Ambulance, Salem Police Dispatch, and Salem Fire Dispatch. We're synonymous. We're one animal now. We just sit in 3 different locations. All this, again, I think will get us above that 4 minutes of time saved on dispatch. And you say, wow, it takes that much time. Sometimes it can take 10 minutes from call inception by every time everybody is properly notified. And I kind of like to make it known that the fire stations are strategically placed for a reason. They put them in 4 corners of the city because it matters. And we get there. And we get there faster than anybody because we're in the corner of the city and we're ready to go. If we're in our station, we're out the door less than a minute. And we're there. Our response times after dispatch are less than 3 minutes on average. So the people are seeing us very, very quickly. And on the really difficult calls, those minutes make the difference. So I'm proud of that. And then lastly, the thing that I've been working for is the modernization of the equipment. I'll touch on the apparatus last. Beginning, I'd like to start with the EMS equipment. Through the funding of grants in ARPA, we wrote a lot of grants this year, and we got Lucas CPR machines. They automatically do CPR for people. Game changer. You get one of those on a person, the color comes back, they turn pink. Now you can just help breathe for them, and then the medics can get there and start putting the drugs on board. We've had those machines on people for 40 minutes, and they've been conscious in the hospital after resuscitation. And that happened right near Councilor Cohen's house. I don't know if you knew the call, but it was an amazing call, and we've had similar stories. So the equipment matters, and we have the best in that. We just replaced all our AEDs on the fire trucks. Now they now have displays, and our guys are now trained to read the rhythms, and we never were, but at the EMT level, a lot of our guys are reading the rhythms, in particular the paramedics. But when the paramedics come in board from the Atlantic company, they can see our display. They don't have to rip our equipment off and put theirs on and start working. It's, again, a time saver. And the machines are just very, very user-friendly. So they're the greatest technology. As part of a grant, I am waiting to take delivery. There's a shortage of the equipment for 80 AEDs, which will eventually, hopefully by the summer, early fall, be distributed to public locations within the downtown of Salem. It might be restaurants. It could be city buildings that don't have an adequate amount, but we'll be going to set up some conversations with the public health department and my team, and we're going to pick some locations. Those AEDs will all be monitored by the internet, and we'll monitor them. We'll know the condition. If someone takes that out of the box and turns it on, it'll automatically dial 911. And they're novice. You don't need any training to use them. They'll walk you through every step. So I can't see that wouldn't be a huge benefit to the busiest parts of our community. So those are some of the technologies that the equipment that I've really worked hard, and the department has supported me in purchasing. So a lot of exciting things have happened and a lot more to come. Lastly, I'll speak to the note of apparatus. We're within days of getting delivery of our new Engine 1. I have pictures of it. It's presently in Walpole at the dealer. They're finalizing installing a few more pieces of equipment, including a radio. That truck will hopefully be on the streets within a month. There has to be a training cycle related to the new equipment that the factory provides. We have been waiting for this truck almost 11 months longer than we thought we should have been, but with equipment shortages all due to COVID and all. And that truck will be a game changer. We can get rid of one of our trucks that's 27 years old. That truck should not have been let to serve. Our ladder truck, which we were here about 7 months ago, well, not even that. It was the night we set the tax base. That's on the assembly line. We've received pictures. It's being assembled as we speak, and I hope to have, my fingers crossed, we'll have that hopefully before haunted happenings. At present, we did have a critical breakdown of our ladder over the winter, and it was out of service for 2 months, 2.5 months. And we were using an old Boston ladder truck, a Beverly ladder truck. on and on and on. We got our ladder truck back. Less than 3 weeks later, we had an engine failure. So inside of service, again, being repaired. It's only 8 years old. Unfortunately, these things are what we have to deal with. And that's why we can't just rely on one ladder truck. And I thank the council for understanding that and allowing us to move ahead and purchase the second ladder truck. So presently, you'll see a Newberry ladder truck driving around the streets of Salem. Fortunately, we have good mutual aid agreements where we share everything. If they call me and I have an extra pump, they get it. If they need something, and they do the same for us. So it's just a good system that works, not just during fires where they send over manpower and so forth. So those are the items that I've been working on. And I want to touch on something that just occurred to me. I know that Lisa Camarada spoke about Spanish lessons for the city workers. Well, our department over the winter time, over 5.5 months, we hired our own Spanish instructor, and we held classes Thursday nights for the firefighters, and we included Atlantic Ambulance employees that wanted to take part, and we taught Spanish in the fire department, and it was a huge success. And it was more situational Spanish. We didn't practice the conjugation of the verbs, although it's necessary and all, but it was just phraseology that would apply to the mission that we do, and it was hugely successful. Hiring, as I mentioned, presently we're up to 11 Spanish speakers. That last group of 8 that are at the academy now, 2 of them Hispanic Spanish speakers. One of them got an academy accommodation, which is incredibly rare. We've hired some fantastic candidates, so I'm excited to see these guys walk across the stage on Friday afternoon. I get to hand them their diploma. They'll be on the trucks within a week, and they're all they're awesome. They're a real pride to our department. And of this reserve list that we're just certifying, there's 2 more Spanish speakers. I'm going to anticipate a question when it comes to the females, Counselor. We are deficient as well. I have no explanation. I have no answer. Patty Keough-Maffagelli just retired. She was the longest serving in our department and one of the first female firefighters in the city of Salem, and it was tough to lose her. And prior to her retirement was Erin Griffin. We had on the last list where we just hired 7 before the 8 here. I had a candidate. She went through the entire process and withdrew before the PAT. And I called her 3 times and begged her to come in and give it another try. And she said, give me a call in a couple months. I wrote her a letter, tried again. She's out. I couldn't get her. And then on this reserve list process, I had another female, and she had chosen another avenue with a different job. So I still asked her if she would like to consider going through the process, and then she could always turn it down at that point, and she denied. So we're trying. There's a pattern in the state. I don't have an answer. I go to the Essex County Fire Chiefs every month, and I'm on the executive board for the State Fire Chiefs Association, and that topic comes up regularly. We're far more deficient than we were even 10 years ago. There's just nothing happening in the fire service to encourage women. So I'll jump ahead. In our capital budget, we are looking to fund the project, which I have designed done, to put in a female locker room. We don't even have that. So that would be an encouraging aspect to getting, an encouraging idea to get a female or other females to join the department. So there's some effort on my part. I don't have an answer in anticipation of your question. I'll stop there and I'll accept questions.
Look at all this excitement on the left side. Councilor Cohen, start up top.
Thank you, Chair McLean. I do want to touch base on the medical situation in the ward and commend you and the police department and the ambulances. Not only did you potentially save a life, I think so, but there were 2 out-of-state cars that we couldn't find the owners, and they were towed in less than 7 minutes, 2 of them. So
that was a remarkable call that day.
It was really good.
But that's just evident of a regular basis.
I just happened to be outside. We were yelling and they couldn't get the ambulance down the street, Piedmont Street. I also want to just say I was standing next to Chief Miller and some of your staff during the Hancock fire. I would guess, you probably know better, that 30 homes were hit in some way by the fire, whether it was soot or some of them looked like they were they were touched from the top of the building to the bottom, and we only lost a building and a third maybe. And the bravery of the guys at 27 Hancock who were on the floor that was on fire, shooting water out the window to keep the fire from spreading is remarkable. I'm sure you commended them for their, I would say, bravery. It was really amazing how many homes and lives you probably saved. If it was at night, it probably would have been a different scenario. Yeah, and thanks for all the work at the O'Keefe, station.
I'm excited for that project.
Yeah, that is really great. I do want to say good news and bad news. The good news is you get new roofs. The bad news is you're going to someday put some solar panels on them. And so having good roofs is a good thing because you can't put the panels up unless you have a, structure that has integrity to it. And you and I have talked about this. I think you're doing really great stuff as far as getting the buildings to a sustainable place, as I talked to Chief Miller about. I do want to just say, if you need any help, you can let me know, but the state incentives for the heat and cooling applied starting a year ago, February, to commercial properties. So you'll be able to get some of those heat pumps and other things at almost no cost. So that will make it easier for you to present the budget in the future. But I want to thank you especially for the Hancock fire and I think for saving the life. It was also on Hancock Street, actually. Just ironically, two different places on the same street. But I really think it showed a lot of the teamwork, the way that you communicated with, I forget if it was Wakefield or Linfield, Beverly, Lynn, the communities that came when the fire was up. Yeah,
13 communities, whether at the fire or covering the city.
someone said you connected to 11 hydrants, and I learned a lot about how you can transfer water from a hydrant to a fire truck and power it to another place.
Relay pumping, yes.
Yeah, relay pumping. So just want to thank you for the residents of the ward.
Half of the department. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Marcillo.
Thank you, Chair. You stole my question, but we can continue though. So what are you doing to try to hire women?
Well, our guys, our team, we're at every job fair, every school event, every public event, and we have a flyer that I made up, and it does include English and Spanish, one on one side, one on the other, with proper translation. I had it professionally translated, and I'm not sure if we're going to have to start doing that in Portuguese. Something I just heard tonight. But the female aspect, in my pamphlet, I made sure to have pictures of female firefighters. And when we're at the schools, I encourage my staff who are there to interact with the females. I don't know if there's anything more we can do at the school level, but I'd be open to suggestions. In the state, in Essex County region, we discuss this often. Maybe there needs to be commercials, maybe there needs to be funding from the state level or something to start recruiting and advertising. I certainly would consider any suggestions.
So what does the rest of Essex County look like with women?
Very few. I don't know that there's more than a handful, and we have 51 communities in the what we call District 5 and District 15, and we call ourselves as a whole Essex County.
So, I mean, I wonder if, for instance, I did a search.
Yeah, please.
And came up very quickly with Halifax, Massachusetts on February 23rd of this year had its first all-female team for a day shift of 3 women. Might be worth giving them a call to find out what they're doing. I mean,
Point made. Point taken.
Something's happening there.
Yeah.
There was 11 women in the Worcester Fire Department in 2021. Don't know what the number is right now. 17 in Boston. Again, there's cities that have women. I'm just curious
if you look
what
at
they're
the
doing.
percentage the women make up, it's still very.
We have 0% though.
Yeah, that's their number is bigger than ours, granted.
But we still have 0.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Looking at your data, can you talk about the jump in investigations for this year? It went up to 476. What does that include?
So we have, we do all our reporting by the NFPA standard, and everything is coded. So if you look at a lot of what we do, if you go to what's considered a call, odor of burning, that would be an investigation. If you go to a flickering light and they're concerned there could be an electrical problem, that's an investigation. So to list all the specific types of investigations would be lengthy. So if you get the flavor of what I'm saying, there's almost everything we go to figure out that they're uncertain that there could be a problem, we would delineate that in different regards as some sort of investigation using the codes.
Okay. I mean, that's a big jump from 328 to 476.
Yeah, we've seen a jump in calls like none other. We're approaching 8,000 now. Even 2019 pre-COVID, we were significantly lower. The city just seems to be busier now, as everybody would admit. It's more crowded. There's more events going on, more housing, more development. We just seem to be busier than we ever have.
Motor vehicle accidents went from 197 to 257.
Yeah. I think, again, the city's been busier. Last year, we've seen greater numbers than we've ever seen during the tourist season. We're busier in those 3 months, and I say those 3 months I count at the end of August through the first 2 weeks of November, equaling about 3 months. Our call volume in that area of time is huge. And of course, if we broke down the motor vehicle accidents, the chief of police could probably do a better job of that. I would say some more of that increase could be seen during that busier tourist season.
That's an interesting point. That would be interesting data to look at. Okay. And then rescues of other types also saw a jump.
So the rescues, if someone's in an elevator and we have to reset the elevator and do our tricks to get them out, that would be considered a rescue. We don't, it's a broad spectrum of calls that are deemed rescues. So, and yeah, again, with the increase in call volume, every number, it seems has gone up exponentially.
Okay. Finally, every now and then I hear from constituents who live on the southern side of Highland Avenue, and they say, there's more and more people living here, and we think there should be a fire department here or a fire station here. Can you talk about the response times to Southern Highland, and if are they also serviced by like Lynn or Peabody?
We're the only ones that service Highland Ave to the Lynn line. And it is one of our longest runs. We call it runtime. Yeah, it's a long response time. And Engine 4 is probably our busiest truck short of Engine 1. Engine 1 is the busiest, and probably very close behind it is Engine 4. And they have the longest response times. They do service the largest area away from the downtown. And yeah, it could be something we need to consider in the future. All the more reason why we're working when this new ladder comes in and we're fully staffed. I would hope we could keep the staffing to a point where that ladder would be in service. Thank you, Chief. That ladder would be in service at least 6 months out of the year. And if manning were ever increased in the future, we could see that number more, because there is a need now, in particular, as everybody has seen the development on the Highland Ave south side has been amazing, incredible.
Yeah, so Engine 4 also does like Marlborough Road and all of that
Yeah.
to the Peabody line.
Yep, and that's where we had all our brush fires the other time, and the chiefs fielded a call from me. I was there, and the Lynn Fire Department had a drone that they purchased mostly with a grant. It was $35,000. And the drone had infrared thermal imaging location. You could drop a pin, it would get GPS location. So when you're standing in nighttime and you see the whole sky glowing, you can't quite figure out where the fire is. This drone could drop a geographical pin and give us a coordinate, and we could. So we're not there yet, but that's the future. So I quickly called the chief and said, we want to get a droid that has those capabilities, but we don't want to put the horse before the cart. Let's get what they need first, and we'll see how we can expand on the program.
Thank you.
Councilor Dominguez.
Thank you, Chair McLean. Thank you, Chief. So happy to hear comments. Very, very encouraged to see that you have full capacity and that you have the diversity, even though we still missing the female side. I see that in the other side, you making some good progress. I cannot say enough how important it is to have representation of the community that you serve, especially on fire and police. You know, I have some experience of people who doesn't really speak the English language, and they cannot be safe because they cannot follow commands. So it's very important to hear that. My questions, I had a couple of questions. I want to thank you once again for your effort. My question is in regard of the new work that you have done in some of the station. As everybody, I mean, many people know that Salem is one of the most oldest fire station in the whole nation. So what you're doing is tremendously appreciated. Can you say where you are right now in terms of those progress? I mean, I know you mentioned a couple of buildings that you already did some reconstruction. Do you have any other in mind that during this budget period you are focusing on?
I mentioned sustainability, and since the city has a study underway, I am kind of discouraged to attempt heating projects, lighting projects, electrical projects, and the like until the sustainability project gets started. And I know Council Cohen mentioned funding availabilities, and the people that are that were hired to do this project for us are aware of these funding opportunities, and they would be the ones that would initiate the search for those. As far as the work I'm doing on the buildings, I see within 3 to 5 years, our buildings will be at a spot where we can safely say they're going to provide a long service to the community. If we didn't take the steps that we took in the last 3 to 5 years, we wouldn't be looking that way. If we can get the windows done at 2 more stations, if we can get the heating and air conditioning systems done and just improve the electrical condition in some of the buildings, we're there. These buildings are going to serve us indefinitely. And if we stay progressive in the maintenance and not reactive, then yeah, that was my goal when I started. So I would hope within 3, maybe 5 years, we'll be there, if that was the question you were asking.
Yes, indeed. The other question I have is regard to the education component. You mentioned, and I know for fact that was one of your priority to educate the public on so many of the programs that you present, because many people doesn't realize that you don't only take care of the fire, but you also deal with so many other necessities that we have when it comes to public safety. In regard to the educational program that you are providing, do you have any information for the public on where you're going to be at this summer period of time? Try to present some of the educational program that you.
We do have an aggressive education program that is run through our fire prevention division. We aggressively inspect properties and encourage code enforcement, and when necessary, enforce code enforcement. And hand in hand, we consider that a roundabout way of educating. More formally, the education takes place when we go ahead and schedule a class. We work with Trish over at the CLC and run some programs with them, and they put a lot of word out for their participants there. We have done some community projects, I believe, in the Point neighborhood, and we've done that through flyers that go out with the kids at school. Possibly some stuff has been sent out in different fashions that I can't quite identify. We do get a lot of grant money for education, and our fire prevention division is in charge of that, and they do a great job. We also, as part of the grant for the AEDs, my goal is to teach CPR one night a month, maybe across the street, first floor annex room, first 20 to sign up. That would be something we to get the word out in all communities in this city, and those are things that are important. Getting the word out is not always easy. We're not going to use code red or reverse 911 for stuff like that. But yeah, we're very successful. If we run something, we're well attended. And we just had a program we did with the American Red Cross, where they went out on a Saturday, and our goal was to install or to touch 100 homes, and they're still finishing up. They're approaching 157 homes, and over 285 smoke or carbon monoxide detectors were installed. If that doesn't make a difference, what will? That was just a hugely successful program, uh, organized by the Red Cross, facilitated by the Salem Fire Department, and funded by National Grid. So through a partnership like that, and we focus a lot of our energies with getting the information to all the poorer neighborhoods in our community. But you can't quite call a neighborhood poorer, but neighborhoods that just have a more dense population and possibly a specific need related to that density. And that's how we drew up our areas. And the word was out, and it was very well responded to, and as the program can attest. So huge success there. And
Glad to hear that.
yeah.
And I also wanted to highlight that, the fact that you are focused on the youth in school is very important.
mhm.
I remember me growing up, I would like to be a firefighter. So seeing you in school, that means that you make some of the youth dream come true. So basically, encourage them from the early age is very helpful. So keep up the good work on that. My last question to you is in regard to the new construction growth. The fact that your responsibility is to save life and to protect people when any of these natural disaster happen. The growth in our community for the new construction that we have versus the capacity that you have as a department. Do you think you can handle it? I mean, it is okay for now, I know, but do you envision any increase on?
Well, I would love to sit here and say we need 10 more firefighters, and I certainly could use them. As I mentioned, it would be fantastic to have that ladder in service instead of 6 months a year, 8 or 10 or 12. We have to look at realities, and I know that the council and the mayor are very supportive to the needs of the department, and they understand that the growth has affected the police and the fire department. And we just added a position to our department, which will be in effect July 1st. And I will certainly in the next cycle ask to add another one, anticipating that maybe we could get up to our goal of possibly having 94 firefighters on the department. Can we handle what we have now? Through aggressive mutual aid, we can handle it. It's a formula that works. We rely on our communities. Would we want to have to rely on them? They're not always available, but more than likely, yes, we can handle it.
Glad to hear that. Thank you.
Well,
Councilor Prosnewski.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chief, for running such a good bunch of people, such an efficient department, and such a professional department that the snap of a fingers is there all the time. We're fortunate in Salem to have the two departments that work together so well, which is kind of unique because you don't see that in many other communities where the police and the fire get along so well and act as a team along with the ambulance company. Everybody's vying for budget money and things like that, and sometimes that creates a little bit of animosity. But historically in this city, the police and the fire department have gotten along extremely well and work together hand in hand. Many situations, especially when things get really tough. So hats off to you for keeping that tradition going. The comment I only wanted to make is I don't think some of the people in the council understand that the hiring process, the hardship of the hiring process for the police and the fire department. One of the things that wasn't mentioned is that before the police and the fire don't have the citizens as a pool, as a hiring pool. They have to go to civil service. So before they can hire somebody, people have to take a civil service test, pass that test, and that's the pool that they have to hire from. So both departments are handcuffed as far as who they can hire. They just can't go out on the street, put up a banner that says help wanted, and then hire people as they come in off the street like all the other departments do. Our civil service department really, really handcuffs that process. I imagine it's maybe a little bit easier to take a fire exam than a police exam, but you don't see the people running to civil service to take police exams like they did in the past. It's not the most desirable job. It's not, it's just challenging. We can't get, 28% of the people can't come out to vote. It's the same with civil service. The numbers are so far down when it comes to trying to get people to go out and take the civil service test so you can have qualified people. It just doesn't happen that easy. That's the biggest hurdle. So when it comes to recruiting, it isn't just come and we're going to hire you as a police officer or as a firefighter. You've got to tell the people to take that exam. That's the big part of it. Get everybody out there to take the civil service exam, because no civil service exam, you're not going to get the job. Thank you.
In relation to that, it used to cost recently $250 to take the exam, and the state has dropped the cost to $25. So that is more to incentivize the people. And if I may, sadly, we take a civil service list, and if I'm looking to fill eight positions, I have to multiply that number by 3 and add 1. So it's 25 names I take, and I have to vet all 25 of those names. And that's exhausting, considering I am a staff of 2, myself and my office manager. So that's why you have the 3 to 5 months. And as you vet, a good majority of them don't vet out. They're just not, they don't meet the standard, whether they didn't meet the residency requirement, their applications are incomplete, on and on and on. And so we started to fill this group of 8 on the reserve list. And if I kept calling it 8, I'm mixing it up with the last group. We started with, I said 25, and now I have 7 left. And I will be, that's the only ones that are remaining. So that's how, it's just a lot of people don't make it through the process. And so there's the difficulty we face.
Thank you, Chief Dion. You already spoke to some of your capital improvement priorities. You talked about the pump truck that's in there. You talked about the construction of the female locker room.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody on the council have any questions relative to CIP for fire before we move to approving the department budget? Also, Merkel.
Thank you, Chair McLean. I motion to approve the fire department's budget for personnel for $9,975,423, and for expenditures 522,203, for a total of $10,497,626.
Councilor Merkel moves to approve the fire personnel budget in the amount of $9,975,423 and the expenditures budget in the amount of $522,203 for a sum of $10,497,626, seconded by Councilor Stott. All those in favor? 2 hands, including my own. It does carry. Nothing else. Thank you, Chief Dion.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Last but certainly not least for our evening, we will hear from our harbor master. Not at all a reflection of the esteem we hold you in, because
you saved the best for last, I'm sure.
Of course, of course.
Good evening. I'd like to thank Chairperson and the committee and the counselors for the opportunity to present here tonight. A little bit about the department. The harbor master, myself as the harbor master, I wear many hats. Some of the hats directly correlate to harbor master duties and the mission. Others, the department absorbs through me, along with me. So I just would like to say, when we talk about the mission, our primary focus is the preservation of life and protection of property in the waters and on the islands within the city's jurisdiction. We also, provide access to the waterway. We do almost all the maintenance on the, or at least coordinate the maintenance through contractors for these access points, look at renewal areas, put in for grants, or coordinate with other departments for the same. An example of that would be like the Willows Pier project. A lot of the projects and a lot of the access points are actually parks, and they always have been in the parks. But because of obviously my expertise with the waterway and looking at climate change and best practices and the uses, I get involved to help facilitate and maybe be the project manager. We also we do almost all our own boat maintenance, except for obviously the OEM guaranteed engine changes and things like that. We work a lot with the police department to focus on grant funding opportunities through port security. I work with Captain Ryan particularly on that. I am the facility security officer for the designated port area, the city's end. And I use my department along with partnership with the police department to implement mandatory MTSA regulations during city-sponsored events. As far as some of the other hats, I coordinate the maintenance, and I'm the liaison for the ferry. Right now, and I thought I was a little bit premature. I thought the ferry would already be delivered with all its new machinery. We did have a little bit of a glitch with the supply chain on some of the additional components that we needed. I will say that I'd rather have a good job than a compromised job. So to get the warranty on the engine overhauls, the engines are headed down to the OEM factory for dyno. So they actually put them on and run them on stands and dyno test them throughout the stages of RPMs to make sure that we're going to get the warranty along with the rebuild. With that came brand new equipment and marine gears. The transmissions on the ferry were original with the vessel, and every year she more than circumnavigates the globe with passenger miles. So that we could not get, if we had a catastrophic failure of the marine gears on either engine, we can't even get those transmissions or parts. So we're renewing those components so that A, they'll be more reliable, and B, that if we do have a casualty, those can be replaced or repaired. So I also serve as port director and staff to the Port Authority. Again, the department does take up some roles along with me, but you can see that in the budget. So I operate as a 2 full-time position department for the Harbor Master mission. That's myself and the Deputy Harbor Master. We fill the rest of the roles and mission with part-time personnel, mostly on a seasonal basis. We do keep people on the payroll year-round because we are a 24/7, 365 response unit. We do have an additional full-time employee, and that is the deputy port planner. We recently lost our deputy port planner, Seth Luttrell, who is a huge asset to the private sector again. I'm happy to say that between myself, the human resources director, and the planning director, Tom Daniel, we were able to interview and settle on what we think is a great candidate who will start the end of June and has an extensive background moving up from Florida, extensive port operations, port planning, waterway planning background that I think is going to dovetail well into Salem's current and future needs. Having said that, we do have a few projects in the wings. They're relative to both the DPA. Everybody's been following the wind marshaling port initiative through the Port Authority. The Willows Pier, we had a meeting today on that. That will be moving forward. We're just waiting for final permits from the Army Corps, and we're hoping to be out to bid. I'd like to say we're going to be out to bid by late summer, but it could be in the fall for that project to take off. And then I have some patrol craft overhauls that I'm doing right now. And you can see a picture of one of the budgets of one of them that's ongoing. We did see some increases in what I requested. Fuel line items, I did move over what was a capital improvement line item in the last 2 years and that was the web-based harbor management system. We're going to keep that, that thanks to Anna and her crew, it's been a success. It was a little bit of an uphill battle to make sure we were going to keep that, because we got to ensure that we're giving finance everything they need in a format that they can, it's useful to them. And it's been a little bit of a struggle in that regard, but it has given us 100% compliance with fees, and it's helped immensely with the assessor and the excise tax and the collector and things like that, for them to be able to realize capturing everything we should. So we did move that over into the regular operational budget from the capital improvement. And obviously fuel is one of those items. And we did see an increase in request for part-time personnel, which is actually, we were close to that amount pre-pandemic. And then we did reduce that part-time at the request of the administration during the pandemic. So we're at that. I can stop here for any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And actually, I will thank you for appending a lot of information to your line items in the budget, which is just happens to be my preferred format for budgeting. It's nice to be able to see the number and see exactly what it's going towards. What was the length of the delay for the ferry that you said you thought would be delivered already?
I was hoping that we were going to start with our own boat on this past Friday. We're probably going to be, I don't want to, I'd like to say we're going to have her within 3 weeks, but let's say we're going to have her up and running by July 4th. One of the big things is just, she has to be on the dynos for about a week, and there's transportation involved each way. The engines are there now, then they have to be installed, aligned with the new transmissions. And as part of that, rather than to put her in service after a yard period, we're going to send her up to the dry dock to get painted and get her. It won't be a total paint job, but it'll be a touch up, get her bottom done, get the zincs done, because we've done, to save money, we've done the overhaul in the water. So the engines were removed while she was in the water. Otherwise, if she was on the waves, we'd be paying a big premium. It's a big job. So I'm thankful for the partnership with the operator who's done the port engineering services to help facilitate, line up the cranes, things like that. And it's been done down at their facility in Charlestown. So saved a lot of money.
Understood. Thank you. Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair McLean. You should get a bigger head for all the hats you've been wearing. I'm really glad to hear that you have someone to replace Seth, because in my opinion, he's one of the most impressive people I've ever worked with. And I have to say this, that I always look forward to the Harbor Master report and the Port Authority meetings, and you won't believe it, but we have another budget meeting at the same time, so I'm going to miss it. I just want to thank you, because I've learned not only from Seth, but from you, more about wind marshaling and how to get the port ready, and the stuff that you do with the ferry. It's really educational. I want to appreciate all the good work you do for the city that I think a lot of people don't really know we even have a harbor master, never mind all the things you do. So I just want to express gratitude.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Councilor Dominguez.
Thank you, Chair McLean. Thank you. I'm probably one of the person that Councilor Cohen just mentioned. I'm not too familiar with the work you do, but maybe like me, we can find so many people in the general public. And I want to hear a little bit about one of the topic that you mentioned here. You provide input regarding the optimum port design, the offshore wind marshaling facility. Can you please update us on where's the process, how the process is right now in terms of the wind marshaling facility that we're getting here in Salem?
Yes, so currently the Crowley Wind Services, they've contracted with AECom as their engineering consultant, and we're at 90% plans. 90% sounds like it's a lot further than it actually is. They're probably within striking range of getting something together that might look like bid documents, but there's quite a few details to work out. Basically where we're at with those 90% plans is a concept which would have a receiving berth along the jetty, what is now the jetty, and a outgoing berth or an onloading berth to go out back out to the leased areas where the traditional key wall is now. There's going to be less attention to upland structure, kind of with these wind marshalling yards. Less is more on the ground. The real money is in the compressive strengths of the key wall and the berths themselves. So just to give you an idea, there'll be nothing kept in the existing berth as far as structure. The compressive loads that they look for the outgoing berth would be somewhere in the vicinity of like 6,600 pounds a square foot, and in the receiving berth about 4,400. And that's to take the compressive loads. And one of the things is this industry, this wind industry, is evolving as we speak. So we're seeing turbine outputs that are much larger than, say, last year. So it's yet to be seen the size and magnitude of all the equipment, but they plan the construction for however you want to look at it, the best case scenario or the I don't want to use worst case scenario, but load bearing scenario that they think they're going to need going forward. So that's about where we're at. We'd be hopeful to see bid documents out like by the end of the summer. That would be great, so that we, the team knows what the numbers are going to come back looking like. But I'm without being in that type of control of anything, I don't want to speak to that with any confidence. Does that answer your question, sir? Yep.
Councilor Prosnewski.
Thank you, Chair. Bill, you certainly do wear a lot of hats. There's no doubt about that. I'm just looking at some of the items over here that you've been putting over here. I see one that says moorings cataloged. Is it capped at 1,035 moorings? Is that all the space that Salem has available to have mooring space in Salem?
So moorings and slips can be somewhat fluid. For instance, Safe Harbor just added additional slip capacity to their docks. So we'll be capturing those permits as they're assigned. They also have rental moorings, and they base their rental moorings on and the reason I'm using them, because it is in the main portion of the harbor, and it's a good sized portion of the water sheet. So they have an Army Corps permit that was handed down from Thompson and Barney Gat. And it dates back to the 80s, where they're allowed up to 350 rental or transient moorings within the water sheets, based on the harbor master's placement. So we have them right now, and I'm doing the final tabulations. We have them right now at about 250 moorings. And you ask, well, what happened to the other 100 moorings? Back in the 80s, the average size boat was about 22 feet. Now the average size boat in that mooring field is probably about 35 feet. So obviously, the larger the boat, the bigger swing room, the less space you can fit additional moorings in. We operate at capacity. Some of the things we try to be fair. We have a list that's a public list that's online. We try to give every one of our mariners or recreational boaters the benefit of the doubt. We have an annual mooring maintenance program, which is mandatory to make sure they're getting their gear inspected. It is a best practice. We also insist that they pay their fee timely. So if they don't pay their fee timely, there's a surcharge, a penalty of $30. And then if they completely ignore it, then we'd be looking at taking that location and assigning it to the next mariner on the list. So to answer your question, this happens throughout all the mooring fields, and it's like painting a bridge. You get to one side, you down the other. We're pretty close to capacity, and a lot of it, you look out there and you say, well, there's plenty of water. There is plenty of water, but not all of it's that deep. So you get down towards Palmer Cove and Area M, they're really squeezed. So if you have a sailboat, we have a gentleman on the list right now. He's got a 50-foot sailboat. And I told him that it's unlikely we're going to be able to accommodate him at that end of the harbor. In most harbors, we say, yeah, we'll give you a mooring. It will be out by Winter Island. The problem is he's not going to get launch service out there. And so at the end of the day, we can provide him a spot. It's just not the spot he wants to be. And that's no fault other than the design of his boat and the topography of our harbor. So we are pretty close to capacity. You're going to see some more moorings go in. Some people downsize their boats, believe it or not. If they get older, or they don't want to deal with the expense of the maintenance. And then if you downsize your boat, then usually I can fit a couple more in. So
I looked at it, comparing it to like parking spaces. Yep. In Salem, we only have so many parking spaces in Salem. How many parking spaces are there for boats out there? And I see that it looks like it's 1035 all the way across. And I just thought that may have been the limit. That's going to be the limit until the waiting, for the
one's an estimate. And so you may see that fluctuate, but it does stay somewhere around between, say, 1020 up to maybe you might see it get to 1060, depending on the allocation of boat and some things that will affect it too, like up in Area S, if the buoy tender comes by and he starts changing the channel slightly, if it starts sloughing in, obviously we don't put moorings into the channel, so we might have to shift some people around. So.
The other thing I see that you collect a lot of money for the city, but on slip fees, mooring fees, and other things, and I don't think that maybe some other people don't realize that storing the boats at Winter Island, that was your baby. That was your idea from the beginning. And I know that the city that was a nice little bonus, good use of the land in the last few years for the city. Is that under your jurisdiction or does that come under Winter Island's jurisdiction? The collection of the money, does it go to the general fund? Does it go to back to you?
That's an excellent question. So it's a revolving account, and it averages right now somewhere around 80,000 a year, of which I put in an up to amount to spend. So I believe I requested 60 this time, up to 60. And the way I project that is based on a twin screw vessel, 2-engine vessel, what I think it's going to cost if I had to do 2 engines and a capital improvement. I try to identify specific known costs and base it on that. The program is administered by my department. We do thank the Parks Department for allowing us to use their property when it's, not being used for other, recreational. We basically take only the spots, the overflow parking. We try to leave we do leave all the public access for the boat ramp spaces available. And it's a little bit of it's like kind of an orchestration of events, trying to get all the boats in timely and get them out timely. But we got a good, we're batting 1,000 for getting them in the water and out of the parks here. We were able to actually get the lot restriped this year.
Yeah, that was a good windfall. It was a great use of the land. And I'm not sure whether the council knows this, but every island that is out in our harbor is Salem's jurisdiction. They all belong to Salem. They all pay taxes to Salem, anybody, and that's Bill's, even around the corner, all the way to Tinker's Island, which is far away from Salem, but it still belongs to Salem. But he's got quite an area to cover. So thank you, Bill. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you, sir.
Councilor Morcello.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question about passenger vessels. The line item for vessel escort and assist had a footnote that talked about Footprint has provided $180,000 mitigation funding to be used to establish a Salem Port Authority. Can you talk about that?
That's a little bit of an older footnote, probably snuck its way in there. It was on the form. That goes back some. So as far as passenger vessel escorts, we made a conscious decision, as did the cruise industry during COVID, for visiting vessels. It wouldn't have been a good picture. It wouldn't have been a good practice. Since then, the actual berth itself kind of fell into a situation where, with some issues with drainage, it started to push one of the sheet power bulkheads against the timber pier. I wasn't comfortable even after the pandemic kind of lifted and cruise ships started making regular arrivals in the area. It wasn't a comfortable situation with putting passengers on that portion of the pier. Also, at the same time, we're embarking on the wind industry, and there was a lot of, I would say, plates spinning at the time as far as conveyance of property, licensing, wharfing agreements, and things like that. So we made a conscious decision. So that's why you don't see any vessel escorts as far as passenger vessels. We have hosted some large yachts to the North Berth, which with the council's help, we did a capital improvement project on the North Berth, which was the old ferry berth. So we utilized that last year. There is a picture in here of one of the research vessels that leased space at the dock for a period of time. And I even see that as the wind marshaling project moves forward, that North Berth will be pivotal in getting some maybe smaller coastal cruise ships in on a smaller size. But it's not that we haven't escorted any vessels. It's just kind of we haven't taken the large passenger vessels since pre-COVID.
Okay, seeing nothing further on the operational budget. Bill, was there anything you wanted to highlight in terms of capital projects upcoming for your department?
I try to fund all the capital projects with the exception of a few through the revolving account, which is derived from the winter boat storage. I did order a department truck, which was under last year's CIP. I did use CIP money for that. We haven't seen that yet, so that's caught in the supply chain. As far as projects, like I said, I try to keep up with the propulsion units. We base our replacements, our capital projects, based on the individual equipment itself. Sometimes you get a good engine, sometimes you get an engine that you're not too happy with. We always go with a manufacturer, and we've been lucky, fortunate to be able to do so. It gives us a 3-year warranty in commercial law enforcement service, which is huge. So it was BRP. BRP ended their relationship with the GSA and that type of manufacturing. So now it's Suzuki. And kind of the silver lining with that is we have a local Suzuki dealer right up the street, and they're good about coming down. So we've done 3 power changes with Suzuki. One is the new boat that we took delivery of, was a PSG grant, Port Security Grant funded vessel. And then we redid the CBA vessel with the Suzuki, and so far, so good. As far as the other ones that I coordinate, I think everybody's near and dear to the Willows Pier. That is moving forward because I know that's a hot button topic. And it helps with the other facilities too. So a lot happens at Blaney Street. You get the ferry, you get the commercial excursions, you have, people don't realize it, but we also commission and decommission the sanitary sewer service for the ferry there. And there's constant people going in and out, and to have fishing take place there is not, one, safe. A, it's not safe with people handling hooks along the harbor walk. And B, it's just, there's too many other uses. And it's detrimental to even the running gear, fishing line, this new fishing line, when it gets into running gear of boats, it's not good for it. So we're hopeful that the Willows Pier will be completed. Hopefully, I'd love to say by this time next year, but certainly by the following fall, and that we can direct all our recreational fishermen that fish from land up there. And that project, is my understanding that we will have, between the Department of Marine Fisheries, their grant, and what the city's put aside, we should be in good shape. But we're hoping that we get decent numbers when they come back from bids.
Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair McLean. I meant to ask you this before. How is the anticipated dredging around the terminal, the wind terminal, going to affect things?
So there's 2 different types of dredging, and there's maintenance dredging, which I think everybody remembers we got a grant with the Army Corps. Well, basically that was a grant from the federal government to the Army Corps for maintenance dredging within the channel. The channel basically stops, it runs from the end of the jetty between the number 25 and 24 buoy out between the islands. So that would be that portion, and that's going to not be disruptive whatsoever to the harbor, other than, there will be dredge vessels in the channel from time to time. There is potential for improvement dredging or dredging within the turning basin. Part of that would be to go along with the project. Part of that would be improvement dredging. And I can tell you that there will not be any loss of private recreational moorings due to that. There may be a consolidation of some of the marina moorings, the ones that get, transient moorings. But that's yet to be seen because there's permitting that has to be involved with that. Right now, there's testing of sediments to see if they're going to be suitable for offshore disposal or not. So that's yet to be seen. But with the construction period itself of the offshore wind terminal, and notwithstanding any improvement dredging, I think it'll be minimal impact. And certainly, whatever impact there is, if you are a private mooring permit holder, you will have a mooring. So.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, Chair McLean. I make a motion to approve the budget for the harbor master for personnel for $373,897, for expenditures of $60,049, for a department total of $433,946.
On the motion to approve the harbor master personnel budget in the amount of $373,897 and the expenditures in the amount of $60,049 for a total of $433,946, seconded by Councilor Stott. All those in favor? 2 plus my own, the matter carries. Thank you, Harbor Master McHugh, for joining us and going through that with us. Thank you, everybody, for all of your time tonight. And I will take a moment to also thank our budget clerk for the evening, Eileen Sacco, who is not here in the room with us, but is participating over Zoom. This is a huge help and a huge lift for this nearly 4-hour meeting.
Thank you all.
I will take one more motion. Motion to adjourn from everybody at the table. All those in favor? Everybody says yes. Motion, meeting adjourned.